I'd like to call to order the Blinn College Board of Trustees meeting for Tuesday, March the 9th. It is the appointed time. I'd like to acknowledge that the public access to this meeting is in room 2 and 3 of the Blinn College Student Center at 651 Blinn Boulevard. And any member of the public who wishes to attend that meeting or make public comment will need to do so in rooms 2 or 3 of the Student Center. As required by state law, this meeting is open to the public, but by telephonic communication. The college is complying with the suspended proceedings of the Open Meetings Act in accordance with sections 418.016 of the Texas Government Code. Members of the public are entitled to participate and address the college through remote connection. The live stream of this meeting is available on YouTube. I'd like to now call this meeting to formal order with and announce that the Texas Government Code permits the Board of Trustees to meet in closed executive session for the following reasons: to consult with the college district's attorneys on matters deemed privileged under the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct, or Government Code 551.071, to deliberate regarding real property under 551.072, a prospective gift under 551.073, certain personnel matters under 551.074, security devices or security audits under 551.076, and economic development negotiations under 551.087. If the board meets in closed session, we will announce the particular section under which we will be doing so prior to the initiating of the closed portion of the meeting. And we will be having an executive session later this evening. Now, if you would stand, I'd like to ask the Reverend Randy Wells to give our invocation, and Mrs. Bain will lead us in the pledge to the flags.
Let us pray. Father God, in the name of Jesus Christ, we bless your name. We thank you for the beginning of spring as things bloom and come alive. We pray as we prepare for spring break that our students will make good choices. We thank you for our chancellor, our board, our faculty, staff, and students. Ask that you guide us during this meeting. In Jesus Christ's name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you very much. Now that we're going to make a slight alteration in our agenda, and I'm going to ask Chancellor Hensley to kick off our meeting with her report, if you would, Dr. Hensley.
Thank you, Chair Mosier and trustees. It's so good to be with you this evening, and good evening. We are excited tonight to be joined by a number of guests. I'd like to introduce them and ask you if you would just stand or wave as I call your name so that our trustees will know who you are. So in beginning, entering into the room right now, we are joined today by 4 of our partners from the Texas A&M University system, and they're going to provide an update regarding the RELIS Academic Alliance and the development of new facilities at the RELIS campus. And so I see Dr. Nancy Schenkel walking right now. Nancy, if you would shake your hand, please. Dr. Schenkel is Associate Vice Chancellor and Provost of the RELIS Academic Alliance. And Dr. James Nelson, Associate Vice Chancellor and Director of the RELIS Academic Alliance. And Mr. Kelly Templin, who is the Director of the RELIS campus. And Isaiah Vance, who's the Assistant Provost. And you'll be hearing from them, trustees, a little bit later on tonight's agenda. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I would also like to recognize and welcome several other guests who are joining us this evening in regards, trustees, to the creation of the Star of the Republic Museum Advisory Committee. We are joined, and I would ask if you would stand as I call your name. Joseph Bell, Deputy Executive Director of Historical Sites for the Texas Historical Commission. And also, we're joined this evening by the proposed officers for the Star of the Republic Museum Advisory Committee. Ann Schwartz Bishop, Chair. John Crane, Vice Chair. And Cindy Smith, Secretary. Thank you for joining us this evening, and trustees, again, you'll be hearing from them very shortly. Well, this would take a moment to have another brag point on our nursing program. This is getting to be a routine that I love. We have some exciting news to share with you again regarding our associate degree nursing program trustees. In January, the Texas Board of Nursing announced that all 89 members of Blinn's associate degree nursing class of 2020 have passed the National Council licensure exam for their very first attempt. This makes Blinn one of just 9 programs statewide to accomplish this feat. Across the state of Texas, the licensure exam pass rate was 91%, and the national pass rate was 86.76%. As you know, in recent months, Blinn has been recognized by nursingprocess.org, rncareers.org, and registerednursing.org for excellence in nursing education. I would particularly like to thank, and I think they are watching by YouTube video right now, Jay Anderson, Vice Chancellor for Health Sciences, Technical Education, and Community Programs, and Michelle Trubenstein, who's our Dean of Health Sciences, and Carla Ross, who is our ADN Program Director. And trustees, now on to our facilities report. On the Brenham campus, construction of the Science, Technology, Engineering, and Innovation Building remains on schedule to open for the fall 2021 semester. The contractor did experience some damage to pipes as a result of the winter storm and is now in the process of finalizing the construction schedule to turn the building over in early July. That will allow us for move-in to take place during the summer and classes to begin for the fall semester. The interior drywall work continues, and the interior door frames, aluminum, and glazing are in process. The contractor has experienced some material-related delays with the exterior glazing, but has provided temporary exterior enclosures so that the interior work may continue. The exterior masonry work continues, and coordination of the move-ins has already begun. Trustees, an item regarding the purchase of information technology and audio-visual equipment for this facility is on tonight's agenda, later on in the agenda tonight. And then regarding our P3 student housing, at the P3 student housing facility, the construction remains on schedule to turn the building over to Blinn in May 2022, in advance of opening it up in time for fall 22 semester. And the foundation and the floor slabs are expected to begin in the next week or to the next 10 days. And the walls and the building structures will begin construction in early May, and the exterior facility work will begin in mid-August. The interiors are scheduled to be completed in March 22, just a year from now. And then at Leroy Dreyer Field, the design team is working with the construction manager at risk to adjust the design and estimate to fit the desired scope of the Phase 1 budget. And this project is scheduled for completion for fall 2022 semester. And then at the Rellis campus, the building permit for the Phase 2 academic building was issued on Wednesday, March the 3rd, and the contractor mobilization began yesterday. This facility is scheduled to open for the fall 22 semester. And finally, trustees, I would like to congratulate Board Chair Charles Mosier on his recent induction into the Texas Newspaper Foundation Hall of Fame. Chair Mosier was inducted in recognition of a career that exceeded 40 years, including work at newspapers in Baytown, LaPorte, Alvin, and Texas City before he became editor and publisher of the Brenham Banner Press in 1970. Mr. Mosier has previously been recognized with the Frank Mayborn Award for the Community Leadership from the Texas Daily Newspaper Association and the Lifetime Achievement in Print Journalism Honor from Sam Houston State University. May we join in applause for our Board Chair Mosier. And with that sent off, Chair Mosier, I'll return the podium to you.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. We're so proud of you.
That, this reflects that I've lived to a ripe old age, I think. So you start getting those awards like that. Thank you. I want to acknowledge for the record that we have no public comment. Is that right, Mr. Schubert? All right. That brings us now to the discussion and possible action items. Mr. Schubert, you going to introduce our guest from the Star of the Republic Museum?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Hensley, fellow trustees. It is my distinct honor tonight to present this agenda item to you, something that we've been working on for a while, and we're very excited about this, just as you share our excitement. And that is here to create officially the advisory committee for the Star of the Republic Museum. As you know, last session, in the 86th session, SB 2309, authored by Senator Kolkhorst, created this setup that we're talking about tonight, and that transferred the operations of the museum to the Historical Commission, and it also created Blinn as the educational provider, educational partner with the Historical Commission. And I would like to really just thank the Historical Commission for their wonderful partnership. We're joined, as you heard earlier tonight, not only Joseph Bell, but also John Crane, who's a commissioner for the Historical Commission. We're joined by them tonight, as well as our officers. I want to thank the Historical Commission personally. I've done a lot of work with them, got to know these people, and they're great people to work with, and I'm looking forward to the many years that we have forward with the Historical Commission. As you heard from Dr. Hensley's report, we are joined by the proposed officers of the committee, and Mr. Mosier has asked that they come and provide a few comments before we do the action item on this, and we're going to go ahead and invite them to come up. Ann will come forward first, and then we'll have John Crane, and then we'll have Cindy Smith come and give a couple of comments about their excitement and what they're looking forward to spearhead on this committee. So with that, Mr. Mosier, I'll return the floor to you to then bring up the officers.
Great. I would simply say that I think we have an outstanding group on this committee, and particularly with these officers that we have to help us help Blinn create what I think will be a very unique thing in the state of Texas in our educational programs at the park out there. So I'm really pleased that Ann and John and Cindy are taking this initial step. They've got the hard part. They've got to start putting this thing together and making it come to life. So we're really anxious to see that and glad that they're willing to be a part of it. And I particularly got to say that Ann and John have a real tie to this because obviously Ann has been a part of Blinn College her whole life, and she's seen the construction of the museum and so forth. And John, we were talking very earlier on, I don't think there's any other of y'all in this room old enough to remember, well, maybe Mr. Bain might be, but John was out here at the very early days of the museum as its curator, and so we know he has a heartfelt interest in that project and would like to see it be a success from not only the standpoint of the Historical Commission, but for Blinn College and the museum. So we're glad. And Ann, we sure appreciate you coming up and giving us your thoughts, and then followed with John and Cindy.
Great. Remove the mask. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Chairman Mosier and Chancellor Hensley and board members. We appreciate the opportunity to appear before you. We are well aware of the passion and the history of Washington and the Brazos. From 1965, when then Representative Gus Mutcher passed legislation to fund the Star of Texas Museum, where he said he wanted to build a star upon a star to, as was previously said, to 2019, when Senator Kalkhorst passed a constitutional amendment, no small feat, to have revenue dedicated to parks and to historical sites. And so we're really excited to be a part of this. We've had our first organizational meeting right before this meeting in anticipation of being appointed. If anything, we have a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of ideas. We had, I think, 19 on the list, but our first order of business is, once appointed, to adopt a charter and to narrow those ideas down to something that is actually doable. So we anticipate trying to bring forward maybe 5 or 6 ideas and then build upon them. There's an immediate need as well as a long-term need. So we look forward with working with you as well as the Texas Historical Commission on this endeavor. And thank you for everything you do.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
Thank you. John, we'd like to hear from you.
Chairman Mosier, members of the board, and Chancellor. It's great to be with you this evening. In August of 1971, I took a position with Blinn College as curator of the Star of the Republic Museum. I've always had a heart for that institution ever since. It's a very, very important institution, and I'm so proud of you and your efforts to maintain the quality of that institution. It has been reaccredited. A lot of effort has gone into making certain that this institution is one of the state's best. And I just want to assure you, from the standpoint of Texas Historical Commission, where I'm wearing that hat tonight, that we want to partner with you, work with you to make sure that the educational programs continue to be the very best, and maybe even aspire to be a little higher. But I'm so honored to work with Ann and her efforts on this particular endeavor are great. And again, Ms. Smith is a valued associate as well. And so thank you for the honor of participating. And again,
Thank you, John. Thank you so much. We appreciate your participation. I should not acknowledge that Cindy is president of the Washington on the Brazos State Park Association, an organization that I think may be one of the earliest friends group that was ever created in the state to support a park, a historic project like that. And so obviously we want them to be a vital part of this. And so Cindy, we're glad to have you participate.
Thank you very much, Chairman Mosier, Chancellor, all the board members. We really appreciate you inviting us to be here. We're so excited about the opportunity that we have. We feel like we can really, with your assistance, now we're really going to be able to create some programs to get more kids out there. We were just talking earlier about, let's get them young. Let's start them in 3rd and 4th grade. You know, let's build their passion for what Texas is all about, because we have to pass that on, you know, to our next generation, so everybody understands what that proud part about Texas is. So we're so excited that you guys are saying, go out there and do it. At first advisory meeting, that was much bigger. We had a lot of great ideas. So like Ann was saying, we're going to tone it down, get it to what's realistic, talk with the superintendent out there about, you know, what it might cost to put them on, and come back to you all with some suggestions. I want to mention something that we're doing out there right now. We are currently known as the Washington on the Brazos Historical Foundation. We had to change it from state park when we were no longer a state park, when we came under the auspices of the THC, which has been great. No big deal. It's worked out fine. It's still the same. The board is fabulous. Everybody has the passion about Texas. If you're not aware, we are shooting a movie out there because San Jacinto has the movie stars. Alamo has John Wayne. Washington on the Brazos has been the best kept secret in Texas, and we no longer want it to be that way. We worked really hard. You know, as you've probably seen, we've rebranded it as the place where Texas became Texas. And I'm hearing everybody say that now, from, Congressman McCall to the Texas bucket list. We were on the Texas bucket list, by the way, on Saturday night. It was really a great program if you guys have a chance to see it. They hit Washington on the Brazos, and they hit San Jacinto, and they hit the Alamo, of course. So our movie, the trailer just came out. I would love to share it with all of you, and maybe if I send it to Leighton, you can get it out to everybody. It's a 2.5-minute trailer. We have professional directors, professional producer, professional actors, professional music, and we want to tell the story of what happened at Washington on the Brazos, because so many people are focused on the drama of the sword and the battle, and like John says, some battles are won with the pen and not with the sword. But I think you'll be very, very impressed with what we've done. The music, the money was raised by the Historical Foundation, and I can't wait for you guys to see it. We were going to have it out on March the 2nd, but COVID and the storm, delayed that. So we had a trailer come out on March the 2nd. We are having the movie come out March the 31st. It'll be on YouTube. We want to get it into every school kids' room that we can on March the 2nd going forward. It's going to be played out at the historic site on a daily basis. It'll replace our other film. And I think there's just a lot that we can do, you guys. We had 50,000 hits the first day. Okay? You can't get 50,000 people out to Washington on the Brazos. So I'm looking forward to you guys seeing it. I'll forward it to you as soon as we get it. And thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you again, Chair Mosier, Chancellor, and Board of Trustees. As you know, this is an action item. We do need a motion to create the Star of the Republic Museum. I'll be standing for any questions.
All right, you've heard the creation of the Republic Museum Advisory Committee. Do I hear a motion that we approve the committee?
I move that we form the Washington on the Brazos Blinn Advisory Committee. Is that correct? Is that
The Star of the Republic
Star
Museum
of the
Advisory
Republic
Committee.
Museum Advisory Committee?
Okay. We had a motion from Mr. Colcourse. We have a second from Mrs. Bain. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Thank you, Leighton. We'd like to get a picture right quick of our first set of slate of officers, and then we'll take just a 5-minute break so that all of the trustees can shake hands and visit with them.
See, I asked your wife if she needed me to bring something back.
She didn't tell you anything, huh? She must be okay then.
I know her, I walked by her parking space and she was going in while I was leaving.
Yeah, today?
It was yesterday, actually.
Yeah.
We tear up that highway.
Oh,
I'm glad it's better
I
now
know.
than it is.
Let's go get some refreshments for a minute.
He's going to have to Charles, can you call the recess at 5:26 p.m.? Just call her. We're going to take a break at 5:26 p.m.
5:26 p.m. We're taking a break for 5 minutes.
It works.
We're gonna have some dessert if you'd like to join us for a few minutes.
introducing Relic? Okay, turn it to her. Thank you. Okay, let's go.
Trustees, if I could have your attention, please. We've got a pretty good part of the agenda left to handle this evening. I think the next item on our agenda is the presentation of the financial statement for the period ending February 28th. Mr. Cervantes, if you would handle that for us, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Hensley, members of the board. I'll go through this. I know we have a lot on the agenda. I'll go through it very quickly. So we are 50% of the way through six months of the fiscal year. The report is through February 2021. Our total revenue for this year shows in the bottom is $77.2 million. Our expenses this year are 53. This is through February again, and leaves us a net of $24 million, Mr. Chairman. When we compare that to last year, $1.8 million increase in revenue. That's largely as a result of our federal money that we had received. There's close to around $9 million included in there. The expenses, however, are good. They're down $4.4 million. Leaves us a net increase in fund balance compared to last year, about $6.2 million more than what we had last year at the same point in time. When we compare our revenue comparison by source, it's hard to do because on the far right, you see that 11.92 on the other compared to 4.2. That's the federal money that we received. It pretty much distorts everything, but it is absolutely accurate that our auxiliaries revenue is down and our tuitions are also down a little bit. So when we compare our tuition and fees revenue compared to budget, it's at 76.7%, $58 million we budgeted, and we had $44.5 million through February. Last year we were at 65.33%, but we had a much higher number in revenue, budgeted revenue. So our tuition is down $1.9 million. The bulk of that is in our auto district, but pretty much all of those are down in all the areas. Fees, on the other hand, are barely up, $1.6 million. Our general fee is down considerably, but our lab course fees makes up the difference, and we are a little bit down in workforce. Our housing and food service revenue total budget was $9.3 million, and our total revenue is 5.3 at 56%, 57%. So we've been struggling in auxiliaries, as we have mentioned all year long. The good news is, from the federal perspective, some of that money has been recaptured. It doesn't show up in this line item, but that's what we've been claiming as lost revenue to the federal government that we've been receiving some reimbursements for. Auxiliary services revenue is $4.1 million. Housing, food service, bookstore, parking, all of them are down, Mr. Chairman, $4.1 million compared to the last year. Our total expenses, I mentioned earlier, were also down $4.4 million. That's good news for us. E&G is the largest portion of that. Some of those expenses are related to the virus, whether it's travel or our utilities are down, and things that you would expect that we would decrease as a result of not being here. There's that phantom services again, $4.4 million, 7.7. These are distorted. It shows salary and wages at 75%, but it's distorted because of the expenses are down by so much. And this compares it to last year. Each one of these, every area pretty much is down except for the debt service is up a little bit. You can see R&R. It's another distortion there because we don't even include R&R in the budget this year. Operating expenses, that's the operational, 3.5%, 6.7%. All of those, instruction I think is one of the largest one. Auxiliary is another one, down quite a bit, that we've had some savings in that area. That is more has to do with the transportation for some of the athletic programs that are going to start up this spring, and so that number is probably going to start going up. So our student cash refunds in February, we received as a summary of $13.2 million. The two far left, see if I can get it, you can see that these cancel each other out. That's some of the funding that we had received for students. And so we have the money coming in, we have the money going out. So it cancels it. But a large part of money coming from Department of Education for financial aid, almost $19 million. We issued, however, a huge refund to students of $8.8 million. And we had some student payments that we had received, $3.4 million. We had other receipts in February too, of $4.3 million. The largest part of that is the bond drawdown for some of our construction activity. We also have, and I'll speak a little bit in a little bit about some of the other grant that we had received. We were able to get some reimbursements of $1.5 million. Our use in February was higher than normal. Most of that is due to this construction activity that we paid out, the $2.6 million. Payroll still is in the $5 million category. We also had a $500,000 that we transferred over to Servitas. So in summary, Mr. Chairman, we had $13.2 million that we received, net that we received from students. Cash received from other sources was $4.3 million. We ended up using about $10 million. That left us a net increase in cash for the month of February of $7.4 million. We took some of the money out of the bank, almost $17 million. We distributed some or increased our CDs, so we invested it, and then we also put some of the money in our investment pools. Unrestricted cash, I mentioned in the workshop, the budget workshop, that the number had grown quite a bit. It was, so it's up to $113 million. And yes, Mr. Bohart, we do intend to, if these keep up, that we would be able to replenish those reserves. So this is new. We'd actually had planned on sharing some of this with you in the February board meeting, but that one kind of went away. So here we are in March. We got some extra money, Mr. Chairman. Over $19 million that came in for this Corona recovery. I can't even announce, I can't remember all of them. I call them higher ed emergency relief 1, 2, and by the way, there's 3 on the way. And what we're being told is it's going to at least match these and maybe another 75%. So money's good coming in, Mr. Chairman. We're having to figure out how we can do some of this.
Mr. Savant,
I did want to mention.
if you run out of accounts to put it in, I'll give you an account number after a while.
So I think I hadn't had a chance to mention it, but the CARES Act was very restrictive in how we could manage that. They just made it really tight. So yes, they're giving a huge sum of it to students, and that part isn't as difficult to manage. But some of this other stuff was more difficult. Carissa, HERF 2 has provided more flexibility. They now let us they allow for this, including lost revenue. It's a big one for us. That's all that auxiliaries, that's the 1.5 that we've already turned into them. We haven't gone that far yet in terms of our tuition and fees, but we haven't strategically figured out exactly how we're going to do this yet. And part of the reason why we haven't moved forward yet is we're waiting for definitions to come out of the Department of Education, and they are going through a transition. The Cabinet Secretary was just announced in March, so hopefully there's going to be some more information that can come out of that. This is another good one, is this indirect cost. It allows institutions to charge up to 10% of their direct cost. It's an indirect cost rate. So ours would be, that would be the minimum. So we've got some interesting questions that are coming out of that too. 10% of what? 10% of lost revenue? I think they count it as an expense. So I think it's possible that we might be able to do that, but we don't know yet. CARES Act and Carissa. So this is there's the student grant portion of it that has been spent on the CARES portion of it. We haven't spent all the student grants that we received for the second round, at least through the end of February. In March, I think by the time March ends, I think this will all be gone. So we're already in the process of distributing that to students. That one came at a good time for them. Institutional funding, a little bit more challenging. The first portion of it, of the $7 million, we have 6.6. There's some action tonight that will help us spend a little bit of that. We have some time frames. We have to spend this by the end of June, or there's other options for us. So I don't think but I think we'll be able to do it. Christmas is a little bit more challenging. We're waiting for some answers. And then here's the CARES institutional strengthening. That was lost revenue. We were able to recapture that right away. And next March, you're going to see another round of money that's going to come for institutional strengthening, about $800,000. So there's more money on the way in that area also. Staff, for any questions, Mr. Chairman?
Any questions? Yeah, anything?
I'm astounded.
They'll take it, right?
I don't know if that's good or bad, but we need to see one way or the other. He's astounded, but
It's a good thing.
yeah, I think it's a good way. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Conclude your. You have any? You good? All right. That brings us to the institutional enrollment and Blinn Brenham Housing Summary Report for the winter 2020 mini-semester and the spring 2021 semester. Dr. Lovell, glad to have you.
Thank you, Chairman. Tonight I want to tell you about enrollment for the winter semester. We affectionately call it the Winnie-mester, and a preliminary report on our spring enrollment. So first I'll start with the winter mini-mester, and that started in December of 20 and ended in January of 21. And last year, if you compare it, the certified numbers, you can see there the head count and the contact hours and the credit hours. And that's the certified numbers. And this year, you can see that we had a negative 9% decline in that enrollment. Now, these mini-mesters are entirely online courses, and each student can just take one course. They're only allowed to take one course because of the short duration of the winter mini-mester. And therefore, you can see that these are unduplicated head counts by definition because you could only take one course. So then we move to the spring semester, and I'd just like to give you a friendly reminder that we've made a lot of changes since COVID and added a lot of parts of term. And in the Institutes of Higher Education, for way over 100 years, we've always had just a 16-week single part of term. But now, many institutions, including ourselves, are adding a lot of different parts of term in addition to the 16 weeks. And this makes enrollment reporting a little bit more challenging because it's never just straight up what is census day for the 16 weeks. The arrow there indicates where we are in the semester currently. So we had the first 4 weeks, the second 4 weeks. That line on the top, those are very small parts of term, maybe 8 or 10 or 12 sections. And then the 12-week, but where most of our enrollment is in the first 8 weeks and in the second 8 weeks and in the 16 week. So you can see we have parts of term that haven't started yet. And that's why I'm giving you a preliminary report, because we don't know the final numbers for the second 8 week and the third, fourth week, et cetera. Also, as a visual reminder, where we used to have virtually 100%, maybe 99% of our classes in the old world were in the 16 week, now about 40% of our classes are. And in the first 8 week, 28% of our classes. And in the second 8 week, in which we have enrollment, but we are going to have more enrollment, and it hasn't started yet, the second 8 weeks starts right after spring break, that's 31% of all the sections we are offering. And so that's why this is a preliminary report. So now I'm going to give you a spring to spring comparison. And in the first column there, you see 2020 certified numbers that the coordinating board has accepted. But my 2021 report right now for spring is partial because we don't have the census day numbers for the second 8 weeks, for instance, or the third, fourth week. And so I've got underlined there partial because you might be discouraged by the decline, how much we would have to grow in enrollment to equal the enrollment of 2020. In your wisdom, you budgeted for negative 20%, and we have been fighting our way, clawing our way up each day to make sure that we have higher and higher enrollment. And just as a reminder, headcount is, of course, easier to comprehend, but we get funded from the state on our contact hours. So I'm always interested in our contact hours, and we're at about negative 9% right now. I'm not sure how much it will improve, but it will improve because there's a bit of a rush to get in that second 8 weeks that will open right after spring break. And this is our unduplicated head count. And again, we have a partial enrollment number here. And we are up, as is the trend, an enormous amount in distance education. And you can see the numbers in Bryan are down. Those are students that are just attending face-to-face classes in Bryan. And we can see in Schulenburg and Sealy those numbers there. So unduplicated head count is about negative 10%, but we get funded off of contact hours, and that's better at negative 9%. My takeaways tonight is that while there are still decreases in enrollment, those decreases continue to be smaller than what y'all budgeted for, which I believe was a 20% decline. And with the increase in the COVID vaccines and the improving pandemic numbers across the state, we are hopeful and optimistic about the enrollment outlook for the fall of 2021. My last few minutes I'll just spend on residential housing here in Brenham and what the numbers look like here. In the spring of 2020 last year, we started off in a non-COVID world, and we had 1,757 beds. This spring, in our COVID world, we only have 1,436 beds. Last spring, we had 87% occupancy. We always drop some from our fall, which is usually 100% when we start out. And this, right now, we're at about 63%. In spring of non-COVID world, we had 1,540 beds leased, and this spring right now, as of today, 899. We have, though, set aside 40 beds for quarantine, up a little bit from what we had set aside in the spring. And I therefore stand open for questions, Mr. Chairman, if anyone would like to ask.
Any questions?
Any idea how our decrease compares with kind of the statewide junior college average, just out of curiosity?
It is not out of the norm at all. However, I would say the big metropolitan areas have seen equal to the past enrollment. And I believe, my theory is because mamas wanted to keep their young people home in COVID. You know, we attract, I think way over 70% of our students come from a long distance away. And there's a bit of a fear factor in sending your children away during a pandemic. So I think that other colleges that are out in a rural area, or at least far from their mother and father's home, people often, those colleges are experiencing it, but community colleges are hit with the decreased enrollment. But I think we, because we attract from every county in Texas and beyond, I think that's one of the reasons we are hit this way.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
No questions?
What was A&M's spring enrollment numbers?
I don't know, but A&M is able to keep their enrollment numbers really high because they have so many applicants. And when A&M enrollment numbers are up, what I mean was when they have a lot of people turn them away because of the pandemic, because of economic problems, because their mom doesn't want them to go away so much. They can pull more students into A&M. That often costs Blinn students because students that didn't get accepted into A&M usually, or a lot of them, come to Blinn. And I believe that they took more out of their funnel than in the past. I don't know if the Relish guests behind us will have any of that information on the tips of their fingers or not. Any other questions?
I see no more questions, so thank you. We appreciate
Mr. Chairman,
it.
it would be okay if I introduced our next guest?
Sure, you bet. You bet.
Trustees, I'm just honored, and Chancellor Hensley, I'm just honored to have some of our Relish partnership colleagues here tonight, and they're going to give you exciting updates on so many events and milestones that are happening at Relish. We have a team presenting, two teams. The first team presenting is Mr. Kelly Templin. Some of y'all may know him. He's the director of the Relish campus. And he is accompanied by Dr. James Nelson, the Associate Vice Chancellor, and the Director for the Relish Academic Alliance. And they are going to speak with you tonight about the new infrastructure at Relish. And it's a really exciting place, and I hope that you all can come out and see this infrastructure development when COVID ends. I know how many hundreds of times have we said that. So please welcome Kelly and Dr. Nelson.
Good evening, Chairman Mosier, Dr. Hensley, members of the board. Thank you so much for having us this evening. It's a beautiful day to be in Brenham, but it's always a beautiful day to be in Brenham. So the drive down 105 from Navasota is one of my favorites. So, and I got to share it with Dr. Nelson this evening. So we observed, Jim and I, that we hadn't changed the date from the original meeting date. So I wanted you to know we were committed to making that meeting, and we found the last available dog sled team at Enterprise Rental Farm. So we were committed. We were going to be here. So I tell everybody it's never a dull day at Relish, and I say that with a bit of complaint, because I tell my wife I just want to be bored one day, just one day, and unfortunately I've not had that opportunity recently. It's always very exciting, and I always like giving this updates, because some of the occurrences, some of the things that are happening out there are truly astounding. So without further ado, I'm going to try and advance this. It doesn't want to cooperate. Enter. Ah, arrows. I managed even by mistake to do it. So, all right, folks, let me back up a little bit. I think you're all aware, and I'm not going to, I always like to put Chancellor Sharp's statement, or a concise statement of what the Relish campus consists of, but there are three legs to the Relish stool, so to speak. There's research, higher education, and workforce training, and Blinn is our partner in the latter two, an essential partner in that. So we thank you for continuing to be a very good and loyal partner on the Relish campus. So today, the numbers, put very simply, we have 8 state agencies. I think everybody knows that the Texas Department of Emergency Management is the latest state agency to fall under the Texas A&M system umbrella. And they are planning a facility at the Relish campus as we speak. We have 12 universities that will now be present with Stephen F. Austin showing up to teach education, upper level education classes there. We have about 2,800 students present on the campus. And to date, since the announcement of the campus in May of 2016, about $750 million invested in the campus from all sources. So as a former city manager, not many people get excited about infrastructure like I do. So forgive me if I wax poetic about thermal lines and things that are under the ground, but it still excites me. So we're staring down, and we will shortly eclipse 1 million square feet of new and renovated space on the campus. I've got 17 capital projects that we're facing this year, and I'll go over those, not each of those, but I'll give you an overview of those shortly. Again, 7 engineering laboratories and facilities on the campus. You're familiar with our academic buildings because Of course, yours was the first on the campus. Dr. Nelson has now two academic facilities on the campus, and we're very excited about your next addition on the campus. I made the statement yesterday when I was briefing the chancellor that Blinn had the most beautiful buildings on the campus, and I think he took it as a matter of fact, but it perhaps is a bit of a challenge. So hopefully we'll step up our game and make our buildings look as good as yours. But you do have beautiful buildings, and the next one will be a beautiful addition to the campus. We continue to upgrade the campus, the test grounds. We're going to be renovating our oldest World War II runway, 35R, or right is what we call that. The pavement there is 80 years old. It's due to be renovated. It served us well. Eventually, we'll renovate all of those surfaces. We're also having to put in and extend infrastructure across the campus because of the ever-expanding needs there. So our progress, and you're familiar with a lot of this. On the top part of the campus, 1 and 2 are the Center for Infrastructure Renewal and the Texas A&M Transportation Institute. You're very familiar with number 3 because it is your facility. Number 4 is your neighbor across the street, Dr. Nelson, in the academic complex. You're probably not as familiar with the Energy Systems Laboratory Edition number 5. My favorite building, because it's mine, is number 6. It's the original Recreation Hall. I know that Mr. Colkhorst has been in that building, and I would invite each of you at your leisure to come to the campus. I would love to give you either a tour altogether or individually if you have time, but I would like to take you inside my building and show you some of the history of the campus. Number 7 is also a facility you're very familiar with. That's the Workforce Trades facility that you helped fund. Thank you very much for that. That's a beautiful facility. You may not know that we have acquired 330 acres immediately to our south. That is the old Knife River Quarry. That's shown as number 8 on this slide. That has some very rough terrain. I describe it as a moonscape because of the excavations there. But as it happens, the United States Army and Marine Corps are very interested in that rough terrain for autonomous vehicles. We're going to be moving our detonation range there so we can actually set off larger charges. I believe you're aware that we do a lot of the bomb disposal and tech training for agencies around the country on the campus. That's a TEACS function. And number 9 is the first dedicated facility of the Bush Combat Development Complex. That is the Research Integration Center. That's an 80,000 square foot facility that is actually ahead of schedule, knock on wood. And shortly there will be a second facility there, but that's coming along very nicely. Number 10 was my principal charge, and that was the extension of the Rellis Parkway and all of the utilities. It's very difficult to see on this slide, but the yellow lines that cross under all of the runways back to Avenue A and the central utility plant, we had, for redundancy in our utilities, all of those utilities had to be put underneath those runways. So it was originally priced at $30 million. We were able to bring it in ahead of time at $26 million, but you can actually turn on the lights on the western half of the campus, so we're very happy about that. So this is the challenge before us now. We have many of these projects that are underway. Number 1 is the Joint Library expansion. That has been mobilized. Number 2, again, a facility you're very familiar with and we're excited about, which is your second building. Number 3 is the renovation of the original chapel on the campus. We're in such need for space out there. We're going to move our Security Operations Center into the chapel so they can do the Lord's work, as I put it. But they're going to handle cybersecurity for the system, and they're going to be working out of the chapel. We have an industrial distribution facility for engineering in number 4, and the old oils lab is being transformed into the Secure America Institute. So they are working with companies around the country and actually the world to be able to secure supply chains for the United States. We have the first of what we hope to be 2 agricultural or agri-life facilities. There, number 6, it's a reproductive research facility that'll be located on the campus. We have a second that I'm hopeful will also be located in that rough proximity on the southern edge of campus, around number 6. Number 7 is something that we just spoke about today. That is the Texas Department of Emergency Management is locating warehouse facilities around the state strategically in response to not just the pandemic, but storms, tornadoes, and what have you. Because that is now a system entity, they're looking at partnering with system campuses to be able to locate these facilities. As you might imagine, they don't want them right on the coast because those facilities could be heavily impacted. Relish has been a resource for TDM even before it was a Texas A&M system entity, and that they have staged from this campus for Harvey, for Ike, for other emergency responses. So last April, I was actually attached to TDM and sent to North Richland Hills to increase mask production for the state of Texas. So we joke internally that in time of emergency, we're all TDM. So we do what we can. So I'm very excited to have TDM there. They will have a number of responsibilities out of that facility. Number 8 is the data center. That will be an initial deployment of 300,000 square feet that can grow up to 600,000 square feet. It'll be the largest edifice on the campus. Berkshire Hathaway is doing the financing, and they're very particular about the underwriting of that facility, so I'm afraid it's very slow going. The gray square immediately to the west of number 8 there will be the largest transformer yard in a 9-county area, and we have a very good partner in BTU that is helping us every step of the way. We had our latest meeting with them at 7 a.m. this morning, so they're good fellows. Number 9 is the second dedicated facility for the Bush Combat Development Complex. That is the ITDC. That is where companies like Lockheed Martin, Morton Thiokol will be able to locate on the campus and be in close proximity to the researchers in the Research Integration Center. So that should break ground this year. And so moving south, we have the Innovative Proving Ground at number 10. And number 11 and 12 are recent additions to the campus, very exciting additions to the campus, and they've recently got a bit of press. We have a kilometer-long ballistics and aero-optics tunnel where they will be doing hypersonics research on the campus. The piers for that will go down 50 feet because of the very limited tolerance for flex in that tunnel. And with our hydric soils and the fact that we are a river bottomland, that's going to be a bit of a challenge. So the engineering is very interesting. It's not shown on there, but in rough proximity, number 12 next to that is the detonation research tube. At one time, the DRT was planned for around Easterwood Airport, but because of the resulting sound and fireball, they've decided that putting landing airplanes around that was not a good idea. So because we already have explosions on the campus and shooting ranges, they're going to locate that here. So that is actually out for bid as we speak. It's just sort of a number 13, we're extending all utilities to the old Knife River property to our south. So water, sewer, power, all of that has to go there. The planning effort for that 330 acres is underway right now. And number 14 is our driving track where Teaks will relocate from where they are on the 410 cross now. And we have an indoor shooting facility for the law enforcement training in number 15. So very exciting and busy year coming up. And forgive these photographs. They were taken on a rather cloudy day, but this is the Research Integration Center. It was taken a couple of weeks ago in anticipation of this meeting. The overhead power line will go away. That is temporary. The high bays in the back can handle everything from a main battle tank to a Reaper drone, and we expect to see probably both of those in that facility. So what you see in front of you is the extension of the Rellis Parkway all the way to the west side of the campus. So if you come to visit us, I can actually take you out on that now and show you that extended parkway. And next, opening in this past January was the second academic building on the campus. Beautiful building, a great compliment to the first. And I'll let Dr. Nelson describe the capabilities of this, so I'll hand it off to him now.
One thing I'd like to point out, Kelly, I think you were right in that the Blinn buildings are the best looking because of the heavy involvement from Richard as a civil engineer. I just want to point that out.
You told me Richard had nothing to do with it. So.
Well, I lied to you. It's good to be here with you again today. Some of what I'm going to tell you is just a little bit of a refresher from when we talked previously, and then update all the new information as it comes through. The academic complex, both buildings that are planned right now are open and are doing very well. When you do come visit with Kelly, be sure to bring your swimming suit with you because we've got an aquatic club in the first building going on that we're trying to address. We had one of the fire suppression lines on the ground floor broke during the freeze. And I think you've all probably been there, you know, sound asleep at 1:30 in the morning. All of a sudden the text message comes in, there's water gushing down from the second floor. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's in the middle of the freeze. It's dark outside. How much damage is it going to be between now and the morning? And fortunately, it was just the fire suppression line. It was only the first floor. But getting that taken care of, but it is a mess. But that building's First phase is about 68,000 square feet. That's the one where Blinn's got a very active programs going on within that facility between really all the allied health is there. The bulk of the second floor Blinn is using, as well as parts of the third floor, and then using classroom space for other courses that are going on. That's got the biology lab, computer training lab, plus all of the simulation labs for the allied health programs. The second phase opened, well, just about 2 months ago now. It was an interesting program. We put that up. It was a 14-month build program. I think many of you were out for the grand opening of phase one, late August of 2019. The 1st of September that same year is when we broke ground for that new building, and it did open on time, really within budget too. There's a lot of exciting facilities that are going on in there. Nancy and Isaiah will talk a bit more about the Welcome Center and some of the student activities, but we have within that a Welcome Center. We got a student engagement area, all of which is being shared with Blinn, trying to optimize and maximize the availability and use of resources. We've got a lot of the engineering laboratories that are within that facility. The electronics lab is one that Blinn will be using that lab instead of building their own out, which I think is phenomenal sharing of resources. One of the other very unique features within that building is a SCADA laboratory. It's the operational technology, the industrial control devices. That's a lab that we've put up with our industry partner. It's going to provide opportunity for students to get in for internships, to work on actual industry projects, and their ability to conduct research in that right next to industry folks. We've also got the mechanical engineering labs, thermal fluid systems. We've got the materials laboratory, computer engineering and network laboratory, which again, as we move into the cyber world with all those issues, is going to be presenting some phenomenal opportunities, again, with what can be done within that room. Every time I ask how many wires of network cable we've got pulled through that building, just smile at me and tell me I don't want to know. But it is a lot. But in total, that complex has got right at 110,000 square feet, and the investment in that was right at $70 million total. One of the other unique features of the complex coming out right now, this is the rendering, and we're starting to furnish it now, is really the outdoor study area, relaxation area, outdoor teaching area. It's really in the crux of the L of those two buildings. One of the very unique features of this, and part of the reason it's built to the extent that it is that it is proving to be really a research area. There was an article in the Chronicle of Higher Education about 18 months ago now. It was a year ago this past June, talking about the value of forested areas on campuses reducing student stress. So I started looking, I saw a few trees sitting out there, and I knew we were putting some more things in. I, called the flagship, Heather Lynch, and said, what do you think about starting to get into some collaborative research programs, utilizing this space and really moving this whole outdoor student experience forward some? She got excited about it, as did landscape architecture, and then working with psychology within from Kingsville as one of the partners at the Academic Alliance. That is really becoming a living laboratory. There have been a number of research proposals that have been written against it already. Some have gotten funded. Some of the surveys have been conducted to begin to really track student experiences through and what should we be doing in regard to the outdoor spaces for students. So when you come to that scenario, I'd really like you to, I'd say come tired, come there at the end of the day, because we got some very nice, reclining furniture that's there. One of my all-time favorites is the hammock tree. And yes, Nancy, you've got your name on a hammock. Don't worry about it. We've already had the first person fall out of a hammock, but that's another story. But this is an area that's really going to be just growing and moving forward as time goes on. Another aspect of this area, I was able to get donated a beach or a sand volleyball court that is out there and part of this. And again, all these facilities we're talking about are available to all of the students that are studying at the Rellis campus. So, Blinn students, when they, finish in the Schwartz building and in your new facility, come on over and enjoy what's out there and engage in a game of volleyball. My recommendation is do not get me or the student workers on your team, because you're sure to lose. And we did. As soon as it was put up, we three of the contractors there, and I grabbed a couple of student workers and went out, and contractors beat us bad. The other building, which Kelly alluded to, is the Agricultural Workforce Education Complex. In round numbers, that's about 44,000 square feet. That's been open a little less than a year now. Right in the midst of COVID, we had the not so grand opening, but I think you'd agree, Chancellor, that it was really I think a very, very nice grand opening, and that the press really had a phenomenal opportunity to talk with the two chancellors and engage in questions and discussion that when you've got, a lot of folks there, it doesn't always happen. So I think, setting the building and the tour that we went through afterwards was great. This building, or this complex, is really three buildings. The classroom office side's about 18,000 square feet. It's got a lot of training spaces that are built within it for, hands-on training. There's the relaxation area coming in behind it, then with a lot of benches and tables for students to sit and work. And behind that is two pavilions. One is predominantly for the Blinn's trades program. The other is predominantly for the agricultural education programs. But again, these are used back and forth by both. Will continue to be. One of the examples I always use in that area is the welding side of the house. The ag folks have a bunch of different types of welding machines, where Blinn has got a lot of the same type of welding machine, which makes sense for what's going on. That, when Blinn does the training, for the class and consistency, it's like take everybody through the same thing and talk about procedures. Ag on the other side has said, no, we don't know what's going to be in a high school when they get there, so we have different machines and they can do it. But the phenomenal piece of this is when they start teaching the ag, those folks can come to the Blinn side. After Blinn has taught their folks, they can take them over to the ag side and say, see, it's exactly the same set of skills. Instead of twisting this knob, you twist that knob to affect what's going on. But the skills that you've learned transfer back and forth. And these are the kind of collaborations that I think are phenomenal sitting out there. On this complex right now, I'm looking to try and raise some external funding to put a third very large pavilion up behind these other two pavilions right now that's going to extend the kind of skills training and testing work that can be done. And that'll be in collaboration with an industry partner also, with the equipment being brought in. And Chancellor, I haven't had a chance to tell you it's coming together. I think if this all comes together, we can move all that trucking simulation training up outside the secure side of the fence. That's one of the things that, if we get this thing funded, it'll go through, and we're beginning to solicit that funding now. We said collaborative skills for education, the skilled trades. And I guess that brings us to the end. Kelly, you want to join me for questions that they may have, if you have any?
Any questions, trustees? Obviously, a lot going on, I tell you. That's amazing.
Please come and visit us. Let us know. I'd love to take you on a tour of the facilities. I tell everybody I'm not much of a campus director. I'm a great tour guide. So please join us anytime.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Chairman Moser, I'd like to introduce you to two other of our colleagues. The vice chancellors and the chancellor and I get to work with them so very often in the week, and they're wonderful partners, and we're very proud of our alliance with RELIS. We have the provost of the RELIS Academic Alliance, Dr. Nancy Schenkel, and the associate provost and the Title IX coordinator, Isaiah Vance.
Well, it is my pleasure to join you this evening. And while Kelly and Jim have been talking about the facilities, Isaiah and I are going to focus on what happens within those facilities. So we're going to talk about a lot of the academic programs that we offer, our partnerships, how we make the alliance work, and some of our recruiting strategies, some things coming up in the near future. All right, so my title slide. And so our goal at RELIS is seamless pathways. And what we're looking at is making it possible for students to start with their associate's degree, to move into baccalaureate degrees, The associate degrees, that's lower division coursework being offered by Blinn. That includes some workforce courses that apply to the applied studies programs. Not all workforce courses will apply to the bachelor's degrees, but we do have some degree programs that will take on those workforce courses. The baccalaureate degrees, this is upper division coursework offered by one of the RELIS Academic Alliance members. And then we're building pathways into graduate degrees at Texas A&M. We have one program already set up with a pathway into a degree program, a master's degree at the Mays School of Business, and I've recently met with other graduate school representatives to look for new pathways. So our goal is to have those seamless pathways all the way through. And let me just say, seamless pathways, it's a whole lot easier to say than actually to make it happen. The devil's in the details, and we have a lot of agreements and memos of understanding and collaborations and meetings to make it a seamless experience for the students. So when we get into the weeds with some of our discussions, we're going to give you a little glimpse of some of those partnerships that we work on. We'll try not to get too far down into the weeds, but certainly ready to answer any questions you may have. These are our partners. Blinn, of course, provides the lower division coursework for our students. And then students can take a bachelor's degree from one of our upper division, our university partners. You've heard that Stephen F. Austin has joined us. They have a faculty member already doing some recruiting for their program. The program will officially start in the fall, but we are recruiting for that. And our bachelor's degrees, when you come to RELIS, you don't pick the university you want to study with. You pick the program that you want to study, and then that will determine which university you would be getting your degree from. And our degrees range from business and engineering. We've got mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, computer science, cybersecurity. We also have programs like criminal justice, public administration, biology, communication, psychology with a health science emphasis, and many others. We have 25 degree programs now offered and bringing on education in the fall along with the general studies. And then in fall of 22, we'll be bringing in kinesiology. All right, now we are classified as a university system center, but we are not a typical university system center. A typical university system or a university center would be something like what is offered at that Lone Star offers. They have a university center, and the way that is set up, they have their building, they rent space to university partners that come in and teach the upper division programs. And that is in many ways the extent of their collaboration. You can use our space and we'll take your check for that and we'll possibly do some shared recruiting along the way with some transfer fares, something like that. We are very much an integrated concept. And by that, we want students to have as close to the experience that a student starting at a four-year institution would have. So we want the students to be able to come in to have those collaboration, to be able to take classes at Blinn and at multiple upper level institutions. Agribusiness is a great example of how we do that alignment. Agribusiness, the degree offered by Kingsville, the students take their lower division at Blinn, but in any given semester, they may be taking an agriculture class from Kingsville, but then they'll be taking their business classes from either Central Texas or Corpus Christi. So a student could be enrolled and possibly taking an elective from Tarleton. So a student could be enrolled in up to 4 conceivably even 5 institutions in a given semester because of that collaboration. We have all of that is backed with agreements for awarding financial aid, transferring credit, and advising the students so that they have a seamless experience by taking these multiple courses from multiple institutions. To make this work, we align our curriculum. We have a common RELIS tuition and fees rate. Students pay Blinn tuition for their Blinn courses, but when they take a class from one of our institutions, they're paying the same rate, even though all the institutions have individual tuition rates. Again, to give the student that seamless experience. We share our facilities. No program owns a classroom or owns an office or owns a space. We collaborate with all of those. Our shared services are a place where we really go above what is a typical university center to provide joint advising. We work closely with the Blinn advisors so that the students have that. We work closely with the advisors at the home institutions to help students be admitted, to help them get their advising, help them know when it's time to apply for graduation, all those kinds of things. We have library recruiting, student life, student organizations, all of those are very much shared experiences. So as highly integrated as we are, this is probably a good time just to remind ourselves that we are an academic alliance. We are not a university. So we do not admit students. The universities do that. We do not graduate students. When students graduate, they get a diploma from the institution. That is the degree awarding institution. We don't award financial aid, but we support the home institutions with all of these processes. Now, our student body, our enrollment this semester, I got our certified numbers for the spring semester this afternoon. So we're at 309. We're very happy with that number. In the fall, we were at 311. So we did not have much loss. But in terms of sort of a longer range plan, we had hoped to be a little higher in enrollment this year, and COVID slowed down some of our enrollment. But we're very happy. Compared to last year, it's a 24% increase. We're in our 3rd year, and 80% of our students come from Blinn. That varies a little bit from semester to semester, but it's never dropped below 80%. It's been as high as 88%. Other students come from Lone Star, Tyler Junior College, Austin Community College, colleges in the Dallas area. So we recruit the transfer students from all across the state. And students come for the quality academic programs in a small campus environment. We get students, as already mentioned, students who want to be in Aggieland in the A&M area, but because A&M is at capacity, they may not be accepted to A&M. Good, strong students. And before we were here, they would finish their degree at Blinn, and then if they didn't get in as a transfer student, they'd have to leave the area and go someplace else. So we are providing that option for folks who want to stay in the Brazos Valley. But another source of our students is the students who come for the small campus environment. There are lots of students who are ready for the big campus experience at A&M, and there are other students that are ready for college, but not at a environment that has classes of 200 or 300, that they really will thrive in the small campus environment that we can provide. Okay, I'm going to let Isaiah talk for a few minutes about some of our initiatives, and then I'll come back and finish us up.
Good evening. Thank you for having us to be able to talk about the RELIS Academic Alliance. What I'm going to discuss this evening is just really the tip of the iceberg of some of the things we've been able to work on. And one of the joys that I've had at the RELIS campus is to be able to really piece a lot of things together. That's one of the things that attracted me to the campus, was being able to take all the academic policies, the programs, and just everything that the individual universities were doing and bringing those folks together in some really creative ways. And in one sense, Relish is sort of a puzzle. That's what really attracted me to the campus. And I think that's what really attracts a lot of students as well. Dr. Schenkel mentioned that we do have one common Relish tuition fee rate. And one of the ways that we really see that playing in with the way that we work with Blinn students is that students can get a very affordable baccalaureate degree going through Blinn College as well. So this evening, I'm going to talk about the dual admissions program, but what I do want to really emphasize is that this is really the outgrowth of some other partnerships we've had to work on in the academic realm. So as Dr. Schenkel mentioned, it's not entirely uncommon for us to have some programs that are designed more in the traditional 2+2 type format that many people are probably familiar with. And so A&M Corpus Christi would be a good example of that one with their business program. Those students attend Blinn College, and then they continue on to Corpus Christi, and few of them actually enroll within a university. But other programs at the Relish campus are highly collaborative, and that's really what we're going to demonstrate tonight, is just how that fluidity works. One of the things that you won't see in the slides here, and that we don't really speak to as much as we probably should, is just the unique nature of the way that we set up the campus. Again, one of the struggles that universities and community colleges often have is, when should the student transfer? The universities have their opinion of that, and they often reach in a little too early. But oftentimes for some of the programs that are more sequential, where students need to start their course of study with the university earlier, oftentimes those students come into the university behind if they complete a full 2 years at the community college. And so what we've done is we've integrated that, and I think we really have solved this puzzle here and made it to where it really is a benefit to both Blinn and the universities that we partner with. And so as part of the dual admissions program, one of the first things I want to do is to make sure we do it, really try to emphasize that this is not concurrent enrollment or co-enrollment the same way that the team or the engineering academy program works, because those students are still taking lower division courses that Blinn offers. Some of those courses are being taken with Texas A&M University. And it's not an overstatement to say that we are entirely dependent on Blinn College District to provide the academic coursework at the freshman and sophomore level. And that's part of the unique partnership, and that's something we celebrate. That is not something that's ever going to go away, because it's really in the student's best interest to provide the instruction that way. Now, one of the challenges with that, though, and this is something I often hear from our staff, particularly the advisors, but also the recruiters, is that how do we explain this to students? And one of the things that we really are trying to do now is to really try to emphasize that not to take away the identity of any of the universities or Blinn College, but to think of the campus as a single entity. And so it's not that you're looking at enrolling your Blinn courses or your university classes with Kingsville or Corpus, but it's what courses do I need this semester and how do I enroll with them? And so one of the things that we're doing, one of the really exciting projects, is we're creating an integrated course inventory that students can look at and register. So if they need an English Composition 1 course, they're not asking, do I take this with Kingsville or with Corpus? I'm kind of confused about this. They look at that course schedule and they enroll in the course, and that course is with Blinn College District. So that's one of the things that we're really going to emphasize here as we look at some of the degree alignment. But we really are able to encourage enrollment in the appropriate recommended sequence. And so what we do is we really start with the 4-year program and we build back from that. And in some cases, as I mentioned with Corpus, that does mean a true 2+2. In other cases, those students are taking Blinn College courses into their junior year, and they may be taking some of the university courses in their freshman or sophomore year. And what that does naturally is it does create greater equity between native students at the home university's campus and the transfer students at the Relish campus. One of the things that we really do try to emphasize too is that Relish, this may seem obvious, but it is a physical space. And we don't speak to that enough with our prospective students that aren't from the area, because what it means practically is that students will come and they'll spend 4 years at the Relish campus. And so even though they're enrolling with a community college starting off and going to a university, there's not a hard break between those two experiences. And that's something we really do try to emphasize. One of the great things too about this, about creating this equity between the native students at the home campus, the home university for these students, and the transfer students at the Relish campus, is that the students at the Relish campus are getting the exact same education as those students at the home campus, but at a much more affordable price. One of the other benefits of this is that they are also able to participate in some of the university-related benefits. So the 12th Man Sports Pass, I don't need to tell you how popular those types of programs are, but our students are eligible for those activities. We also have student engagement, or organizations and such. And then one of the final benefits of the dual admissions program is that we do lock in the tuition fee cohort rate for the universities. So what that means practically is that if we have a student that is applying to Tarleton State University for fall of 21, they're a first-time in college student, so they're really not prepared to go in the criminal justice program right now. But what they would do is they would apply to that university, they would be admitted, and then they would enroll with Blinn College. And again, they're physically at the Rellis campus for all 4 years, but those first 2 years they're spending with Blinn College District. But they know that by the time they reach that junior year and they're prepared to enroll with Tarleton State, they're at a point where other peers that are just now transferring in, maybe from out of the area, they're paying a different cohort rate, a more expensive cohort rate. But those students that are coming in are still paying what they would have if they had started in 21. So here's an example of the tuition fees. This is from last academic year. And so you can see that students that come to the Rellis campus, when you factor in 60 hours of Blinn College District tuition fees, this is out of district as well, since we are in Brazos County, and the upper division courses, it comes in just under $30,000. You can compare that with some of the other area schools, some of our competitors, if you will. And these are not private schools that we're comparing ourselves to. These are other public universities in the state, but you can see that we come in very favorably there. So as we've started the dual admissions program, and one of the joys that I have, one of the skills I've really tried to start to develop is to be able to speak with folks like you about the dual admission program, the benefits of this, but also be able to talk to students and the recruiters to try to really help them to understand what this program is. And it's really helped me to think through not only what this is, but what it's not. And so, as I mentioned, the team program earlier, that's a pathway program for A&M. And it's no secret to say that that's a way that they can build up their junior and senior classes, because we know that retention, students often leave before they hit those years. So it's a pipeline that they're developing. And so for us, as we're looking at the dual admissions program, as I mentioned before, this is not a concurrent enrollment program necessarily, but what we're also not doing is we're not closing the door on those students going to Texas A&M. So as we're recruiting students to participate in the dual admissions program, we want them to understand that they are able to reap all the benefits without sacrificing anything. So if it's their dream to go to A&M and they want to go through Blinn College to do it, that's wonderful. We encourage that. But we also want them to have a plan should they not be admitted to A&M. And we think the dual admission program does just that. It's also not skipping an associate's degree. And I'll show a couple of alignment charts here in just a moment to demonstrate what that looks like. And finally, just to circle back again to reemphasize this, it's not a concurrent enrollment program from the start. So we're not offering the same courses that Blinn is offering. We truly are partnering, and we are really aligning our course offerings with Blinn so that there really is a benefit to both parties as well. One of the other things I should mention at this point too, one of the kind of puzzles that I've been trying to piece together here still, Dr. Schenkel mentioned that we do have quite a few students coming in, about 20% of our population coming in from outside of Blinn College District. And so one of the things that we really have been trying to promote with those folks, those administrators and staff members that we're working with, is that this is not necessarily a lose-lose. You know, obviously folks like Lone Star want to retain their students. They want to keep those students. And so they'll say things like, well, if they come to Rellis, can they take online courses with us at Lone Star? The one thing that I really enjoy about a lot of these conversations is we can always center folks back to students, and we can say, okay, what is in the best interest of students? And it's not long before they admit, okay, it's probably in their best interest for them to physically attend class. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to work with those other partners like Lone Star and Tyler, and keep them from feeling like they have to hang on to these students for 2 full years if it's not in the student's best interest. If they need to come to Rellis and start with us right away. But we're also promoting the idea because of some of the new funding models in Texas that they're getting credit for transferring a student to a university. Blinn, on the other hand, though, now you all are receiving the SCH from those students. So if a student transfers in their sophomore year to start taking courses in the psych program with Kingsville, there's a benefit to both parties. That other community college outside of our region, Blinn College District, and obviously also the university in that scenario. So what we really are trying to do here, and this is not just with the dual admissions program, this is across the board, we really are trying to maximize the applicable courses. That's a key word that we use. So for many years, transferable was the key word. Applicable is what we're using now. So we don't care if the course is transfer. We know that everything that Blinn offers on the academic side transfers. We want to know that it applies to the 120 credit hours students need for a baccalaureate degree. And that's one of the wonderful things that we've been able to do in partnering with Dr. Lovell and her staff. We've been able to align these. And if you go to our website, you'll see a full inventory of all our programs. And with the exception of engineering, all of our programs are at exactly 120 credit hours. And that includes the Blinn Associate's degree as part of that. So here's an example of one of those transfer guides. This is more of a traditional 2+2 program, not by design, but just because of the natural sequencing of the courses. What you see here is this is the agribusiness program that Kingsville offers. And I've highlighted two things here. The first, in the freshman year, is a course that is not part of the academic course guide manual, if you're familiar with that terminology. Essentially what that means is this is not a course that Blinn teaches. So that's one that Kingsville would teach. Students would take that in their freshman year. But then you see a speech course in the junior year, the spring term. That's a Blinn course. And so we really are trying to sequence this naturally so that by students taking courses at RELIS are taking them in sequence and they're not getting behind because of prerequisites and all those hurdles that students would encounter if they didn't take those courses in the appropriate order. So at this time, I'm going to pass it back to Dr. Schenkel, but I'll pause for just a moment to see if anybody has any questions before I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and so Isaiah forgot to mention that our tuition rate is the third most affordable in the state of Texas. So when you combine the Blinn college rate plus our tuition rate, we really are a very affordable option for students. Now, to finish up, I want to focus on our successful pathways. To date, we started in fall of 18. To date, we have had 51 students graduate from RELIS. All of those graduates attended Blinn College for part of their education. So that is proof of the concept, and 5 of those students have earned admission to Texas A&M's Mays Business School. So again, proof that the pathways work. I want to focus in on, we have a web page where we have the students tell their stories. So it's a student spotlight of our graduates. And I want to tell the story of Marquisha, who was one of our students in the first cohort. She was one of our student workers. She's from Hearne, Texas. And in her story, she says that she was getting ready to finish at Blinn and was looking to transfer out of the area when a RELIS recruiter from Corpus Christi met with her and told her about RELIS. And she said, RELIS really popped up at the right time for me. I was getting ready to transfer to a bigger school, but this choice allowed me to stay closer to home while earning a quality education at a great price. Now, these students are welcome to find jobs around the state, around the nation, but she's a local girl, and she's going to be staying locally, looking for a career in banking. So this is evidence of how we are serving students in the area and really making a difference for so many of our students. Now, I said already that the seamless experience is a lot easier to say than actually make happen. And part of that success is our partnership with Blinn. So we have been in many meetings with Dr. Lovell, Dr. Busicki, your deans. We meet monthly and more often as needed to talk about issues. Isaiah and his team meet with your deans to work out those transfer guides. And we look at where is the curriculum working and where can we improve the prerequisites and the alignment to help students move more smoothly. I meet regularly with Dr. McBride, who, with our student engagement. So we partner together on that. We have multiple conversations with advisors, and we have a recruiting joint venture coming up, a virtual transfer fair with Blinn in April. So we really, really appreciate the partnership with Blinn, and we would not be able to provide the success like we've done for students like Marquisha without your partnership. All right. Now, I think, do you have any questions for me or Isaiah, or maybe bring Kelly and Jim back?
I'm curious about something. If someone wanted to get a business degree, is there only of the system schools that are at RELIS, is there only one system school that has business degrees? Okay,
Right.
so they don't compete with different.
Right.
Okay.
And there's the example you chose has just a little nuance to it. So Corpus Christi is a AACSB business accredited program. When we set up the degrees, we want to make sure there's no competition among the schools. So to have a second program come in that it could be similar, but if it serves a different population or has some distinctive elements. So Central Texas, Texas A&M Central Texas offers a Bachelor of Applied Studies degree in business, and it has a different focus in its business. That your point is very true. We have a new social work program this year. Nobody else will be bringing in social work because in order to make it collaborative, you have to take away some of that competition.
Mm-hmm. So they would, when they graduated their four-year degree, it would be whatever that main focus of study, it would be from that, their degree would be from that
Right.
school.
The degree granting institution. We sometimes call it the home institution. So while students may be co-enrolled, the home institution is the institution that will award the degree. And students are not confused by this. They're very proud of their home institution. They wear RELIS t-shirts, but they also wear a Corpus Christi t-shirt or a Tarleton t-shirt. We have mascots around the building, including Blinn. Students love to take pictures standing in front of their mascot to say, I may be a Corpus Christi Islander, I'm a RELIS student, but I'm also getting my degree from Corpus Christi. Students are not confused by this, right?
Okay. Any other questions? We certainly appreciate all of this information and update. It's really great to hear.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question.
All right.
When are y'all going to build some places out there to eat? I'm known for that.
The question you ask is a broad RELIS question. It's one that Kelly and I have talked about often. And to answer your question, we just put things into perspective slightly. If you look at the A&M main campus from Texas Avenue to Highway 2818, from George Bush over to University. I think some of you may have been at A&M, ended at Welborn Road. We'll just take it out to 2018. That's a little over 800 acres. RELIS, as Kelly was explaining, is about 2,000 acres, and we've just bought another 330 some acres. So it's huge, and there's a lot of spaces between it. Food is an issue. Way that's being dealt with right now and handled is that we've got to think in terms of the academic side, that we've got a system that has come together. Blinn within its bookstore, has got it's what I call the grab and go. There's the prepackaged sandwiches, the candy bars, the soda in the closed cases, the wonderful food, all the potato chips in that. What we've got within our academic building, ACB 1, is the kiosk, which is more the Starbucks style things. It's Glass Shot Espresso runs it, but you can get the hot beverages. You can get in the morning, he's got kolaches and things like that. There's the sandwiches that can get made up during lunch. So we've got these available. COVID has put a crimp on both of these with just opening hours and things. But in the steady state between what Blinn's got and what we've got really most of what the students are expecting. The only thing we're missing is a large cafeteria. We can go down and select pork and beans and then, sit somewhere else. But, for this, and we're encouraging the students to recognize you need to be moving between the two buildings. Don't expect to have everything in every building. I don't think on your Villa Maria campus it's that way. They've got to walk over a building, and we're not talking great distances. So that's the way it's being handled right now. In the big picture, I think, Kelly, you said that there is some the franchises that are looking, but again, the food industry, supply follows demand, unlike the typical model where, demand, leads supply.
And we had some interest. Unfortunately, COVID has impacted that. One thing that we have done since TTI has moved their headquarters to the campus, which is about 450 people in one fell swoop of the campus, their question was the same: where do we eat? Well, Jim and I having already been out there, we've met every greasy spoon within 10 minutes of the campus. I literally put out a spreadsheet of everything that was available within 10 minutes. So downtown Ryan is very accessible. We've got other places like Hilltop Burgers. I've got another place in Burleson County just today. So it's not optimal, sir, but the market will eventually respond to that. And we had a number of inquiries from local developers, and I believe that will come back as the market comes back and we move away.
Thank you so much, Jim. We appreciate again y'all coming over and giving us an update. Kelly, thank y'all. Any other questions any other comments or thoughts? Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Appreciate y'all taking the time. Thank you. All right, trustees, we got still a ways to go. Let's go to the last item under an update on the college facilities impacted by the winter storm. Mr. O'Malley, are you going to give us a briefing on that?
Got a show and tell, it looks like.
Yes, sir. I've got a show and tell for us. Won't be quite as exciting as that Rella stuff. That's really some cool stuff. Want to pass this around for both sides. What Dr. Krausen has is a typical sprinkler head that we have at the Wheeler building. And what Reverend Wells is passing around is I apologize for that. What Reverend Wells is passing around is the actual pipe, and that does come in two pieces, so be careful with it. That's the actual pipe that broke and split in the old main building. I want to give a little update on where we're at with our storm. You may recall that we met on February the 24th in emergency fashion to get some authorization to go forward with getting these buildings back in shape. And in that meeting, we discussed two primary things from my side of the table. That was the preventative measures that we took prior to the storm, and then we also discussed all the identified buildings that had some issues. Since that time, we've moved on to trying to get these things back in place and getting operational. Again, I want to give you an update on that. We've got our team organized. We've had some very good and detailed discussions with our insurance company and gone through the process that it's going to involve with getting the reimbursement and them identifying the approvals of how we want to go about spending the funds to make the improvements that need to be done. We've also identified 5 major tasks that our team is going to be working on over the next 5 to 6 months, getting the buildings back in shape. Those being the mitigation piece first, which is not finished but close. That was the original water eradication that we did and dehumidification. We're removing some flooring, ceilings, and fixing the plumbing leaks that we had. And we had several buildings that were, I consider, smaller projects, and all those leaks have been fixed, and those buildings are all occupied again and back in service. The larger buildings are the ones we're still having a few issues with. The second area of the task-related items are the system assessments. Those are ongoing. We've performed some of those. We're actually having consultants come in and look at the different systems in the different buildings. That'd be MEP systems, our structured cabling, for example, those type things that we're having them look at, HVAC. Content assessments is the third piece of this that we're doing. We're having someone come and look at furniture, look at our IT equipment. Those meetings are actually scheduled for this week. The balance of this week, we'll have some consultants in that are assessing that. Then our relocation piece is the fourth piece. That involves our faculty, staff, and students, which has been accomplished. Those folks that were displaced from the buildings have new homes, and that work has been done. And the next piece of the relocation will be the contents that we have to remove from buildings and either salvage and store or dispose of that's been damaged. And that's another piece that's in the relocation area. And then the last piece is the restoration. And that's getting our build back for the larger projects and the smaller ones. And from the larger project standpoint, we've identified some design and build teams that are going to come in, and some have come in already and started assessing the damage. Once we develop that full scope of work and have that contractor on board, we'll have another follow-up call with our insurance company to get their blessing to go forward with what the scope and timeline is for completion. I mentioned on the 24th, and speaking of timeline, my goal is still to have our buildings back in operation by the fall semester, with the emphasis for the Wheeler Hall meeting that goal for sure. I still don't have the contractors on board. I don't know the availability of materials, so I'll have updates on our timeline and schedule as we progress, but that is certainly my goal right now. So I'll be happy to stand for any questions.
Richard, can you anticipate getting the workers, the companies you need, the people, the craftsmen you need? Are they tied up everywhere else, or?
The companies that we've had discussions with so far are eager and interested and willing to work and feel like they can meet our timeline. Yes, sir.
Good.
From a labor standpoint, I don't know about materials yet.
Yeah. Any other questions? Well, that's good, Richard. Thanks.
Thank you all very much.
O'Malley, thank you.
I can't remember if we talked about this or not, but from an insurance perspective for the board's information, we're covered, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct. We have a $25,000 deductible, and all the rest of that is covered. There has been some of the costs. As Richard said, we've been meeting regularly with the insurance company and working out, but so far, everything's been yes. All of that's covered, including moving students to different dorms and things of that sort. That's all part of it too. If it's third-party dorms, I should say. Yeah.
That's one deductible for the whole.
That's correct, sir. Yes, and we were I'll just brag a little bit on our insurance folks. The policy that we just renegotiated just a couple months ago, it had a $100,000 deductible, and they knocked it down to $25,000. So timing is everything.
There you go.
They go back up
Good
next
job.
year. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you. Okay, that brings us, trustees, to the consent items. You've seen, these are all one item to be considered by the board, and you've had an opportunity to see these ahead of time. Can I get a motion we approve these consent agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion from Mr. Wells. Do I have a second? I have a second from Mrs. Bain. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. All right, that gets us down to item 8, our discussion and possible action items. And that takes us back to the first one, which we had our workshop on the tuition and fees for fiscal year 21-22. Mr. Cervantes is back before us. And let me could I be so bold as to ask, does anyone have any questions about what we heard at the workshop? I mean, is there anything that needs to be, I don't want to take anything away from our, but I just want, oops, excuse me, if there's any, I didn't,
So can we get by with a motion in a second?
I would think so.
I also move that we approve the tuition and fees for the fiscal year 2021, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion and a second that we approve the tuition and fees as presented. Y'all have that in. Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say no. Motion carries.
Trustees.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Don't look back when he says it. Okay, that brings us to the presentation of the Title IV Compliance and Student Activity Audit Report related to the district-wide risk assessment effort. Mr. Savani, you going to kick that off?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Hensley, members of the board. I'll keep this very brief, and my main job here is to introduce Dan Graves from Weaver Tidwell, but we are looking for a motion, as we had with this past one, to discuss and accept receipt of the Title IV report that he's getting ready to tell you. This has been a long road. It's a continuation of what we started with Weaver Tidwell over a year ago on the risk assessment. And then this is the first of the areas that is being audited. And this is the first report. So there's a lot of firsts here. We have more on the way. So Mr. Graves, if you don't mind, if you could come up and make your presentation, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, trustees, Chancellor, for having me. You should have two reports in your packet. One is a 3-page summary. The other is the full audit report. I'm going to focus on the 3-page summary, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on the full report as well. As Richard said, this is our first report that we've issued from our 2021 fiscal year internal audit plan and I'm happy to come back to you today and present to you a strong rating on this financial aid and student accounting report. We did have 2 findings that were risk rated as moderate from the result of the report. Those 2 centered around the timely reporting of student withdrawals. When a student withdraws from a class, it has an impact on financial aid, and the timeliness of that reporting from the faculty when the student withdraws from the course through the financial aid chain has an effect on the reporting that goes up to the Department of Education. And the second of those 2 findings is a finding that is an IT-related finding over user access. When we came and presented to the board back when we did the risk assessment, one of the questions we got asked, and one that I frequently get asked, is how do you integrate information technology into your audits? And this is part of that integration, is we always look at system access when we look at an audit area. And we did have some users who had some access that didn't align with their job responsibilities. We identified that and brought that back to management. Management has responded to each one of these findings. We included those in the full report so that you have it and you know what the action items are for management as they move forward to address these. And we also recommend that in the next fiscal year's audit plan that we perform follow-ups over those 2 areas or those 2 findings so that we can come back and report to you that the actions taken by the administration to remediate those issues has been completed. And that is the summary, very short summary of that report, of the full report. I will pause a moment to open up for any questions specifically about the report before I move on with the rest of the summary.
You already were looking at me. This is just the same question that I asked you when you did the presentation at one of our meetings, of which not all of the board members were present.
Correct.
So I just, being that I've got a little background from the auditing perspective, one of the items I noted that the sampling was 30 students out of 15,666, which is about 1/5 of 1%. And I asked the question whether or not that sizing was appropriate based upon the large number of students. And to be honest with you, I couldn't really hear what you were saying over the deal. So if you wouldn't mind covering that.
Absolutely happy to cover that for you. Yes. So the sampling method we use, the methodology we use as a firm is a statistically based sampling methodology. And to have all our samples are statistically valid and can bring back a report of the frequency. And so our sample is based on a population frequency. This is a little bit different than some other sampling that typically gets applied in an audit. Usually what happens in an audit is you're testing balances. And so you test a sample size that might be a little bit larger because you can then take the differences, any differences you identify, and then extrapolate it back to a population. We're doing testing over controls, so it's a little bit different methodology and thought process in that we expect 0 errors in a control test. Anytime sampling methodology tells you anytime you sample for controls, you expect 0 errors, and therefore you can have statistically valid sample sizes that are a little bit smaller. So what you might have been accustomed to and expected out of a population of 15,000 to be looking at maybe 60 samples, with a control test, you can have statistically valid samples that are smaller based on the assumption of 0 errors, and that's why we use it.
Okay. Second question. I think you also did a sampling of the deregistration portion, in which again it was another 30 out of 3,983, and I think if I read correctly, you found 6 of those that had some form of deficiency, which is 20% of that sampling. And I guess my question is, again, from your perspective or your company's perspective, from my perspective, 20% seems pretty high, because if you go to 20% of 4,000, you're affecting 1,000 deregistration. So if you wouldn't mind commenting on that.
That is why it received a moderate risk rating.
Okay.
Because of how much and the potential impact. Now, what that 20% error rate doesn't tell you is the dollar value that's impacted. So immediately, again, the extrapolation of a 20% error projected against the population isn't exact science for a control test. So it's very hard to forecast out to a population in control testing methodology for sampling what that looks like against the population. What it does tell you is there's a systemic issue, and that's why the recommendation we proposed and the response back to management addresses the system and not specific instances. So hopefully that helps. It's a little bit different school of thought from the traditional sampling methodology.
Yeah, because what I did was I basically, the 15,666 students, there's about $53 million involved there. And so I just said, okay, and that accounts to about $3,400 per student. And assuming 20% of the almost 4,000, that's a $13.5 million impact in student financial aid dollars that could potentially jeopardize us if this doesn't get better accounted for.
Yes, sir. And that's right from a straight math standpoint, but a
Sure.
control test says even if it's $1 off, it's wrong. Whereas other sampling would say, well, it's $1 off, it's immaterial, we'll pass on it and not include it as a finding. Control testing is absolute, because a control failure could result in a $1 issue or it could result in $1 million issue. It's the check and balance that we're testing. We're not testing the dollar value. So the straight math gets a little blurry really quick when that happens.
So, and one last question, which which I found surprising, and you probably would have more expertise from this, from the standpoint across maybe all colleges, but the numbers reflect that 25% of our students deregistered during a year, which was the 3,983, which was in the report, against 15,660. Is that pretty common across colleges, that you have 25% that basically leave during an instruction year?
First of all, the coverage period was 18 months, so it's a little bit
Oh, it's
longer than
18
a year.
months.
Yes, sir. So
Okay, well, it's,
range in the coverage period was September 1, 2019 through August 31st, 2021. So I guess that is just 12 months. Take that back. We usually do a little bit longer period, but for financial aid, it makes sense to do a year. That is deregistration and graduation. So those two numbers combined.
no, that was a different number. That was 4,868.
Oh, I see that now.
That's 31%.
So the 4,864, that is all withdrawals. So that is withdrawal from any one course. So they could be enrolled in 18 hours and drop one that has an impact on the financial aid calculation. So it could be a drop of a course and not a complete deregistration from all courses for that test in particular.
Okay.
So, I mean, that I would think is pretty common. The number of 4,864 is not particularly alarming to me, just from a size standpoint.
Okay.
Given that we cover a lot, you saw the registration slide with the 4 weeks, the 8 weeks, the 12 weeks, the
Sure.
15 week term. There's a lot of changes that occur that would impact financial aid, and that's not unnecessarily common.
Okay. I'm through, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, one of the things that I was surprised that I did not see in your audit was the audit of whether or not students were taking courses within their degrees. And that's something that many schools throughout the nation are concerned with and are currently being audited on. Any comment on that?
That would be in the scope of a different audit. That would be in a registration and enrollment audit, and this was particularly focused on financial aid and the application of.
Well, it impacts financial aid, because if you're not taking courses within your degree, they're not supposed to be paid for by financial aid.
Absolutely, I agree, it impacts that. What we did look at was assessment of charges and discounts. You'll see that is a process that we've included. So every process that we looked at that they received financial aid, they were eligible to receive for that course. But we didn't look at the sort of 30 by 60, are they taking the courses that fit within their degree plan? Again, that would be in a different process. So on our big risk assessment, if you remember the big scatter plot with the red and the green and all the colors, that's a different number on the chart versus just financial aid. So we would cover that in a different
Okay,
audit.
all right, good, that's good.
So the risk is still there.
Right.
It's not that we didn't address it. It just would be addressed in a different audit.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you.
Any other questions? We're going to go through, from year to year, you're going to go through different segments of the college. So how do we, is there a way to, or what's to be done? Is this administration or how that we get a recap or a catch-up each year on this, what you did this time, and whether or not the fix was done where it needed to be done, and how do we get that? How do we get that? Have y'all talked about that? Or?
I could absolutely address that. I think you actually stepped out of the room when I addressed that earlier. Is that on next year's audit plan, we have proposed that we, sorry, I haven't touched anything. On next year's audit plan, we have proposed that we perform follow-up procedures over these findings so that we can come back and validate back to you that management has taken the corrective action that they have stated in the report, or something close to that addresses the issue. So we propose follow-up procedures to come back and report that back to you.
That's good. Yeah.
Great.
Very good. Any other questions? Reverend Wells, you have any questions? Douglas, Mr. O'Hart, you have any other questions?
Sir, I'm fine.
Mrs. Bain? Okay. All right, thank you so much. We
I do
appreciate it.
have the rest of this, and I
Yeah,
do think
I'm
we need
sorry, go ahead.
a motion
I
to
just want
cover. Do you want
to sure
the
we got through with that.
motion for the report first?
Mr. Mosier, if you don't mind, we need a motion that we discuss and accept receipt of the report that Mr. Graves just provided to us. So if we need a motion that we have discussed and we accept receipt of the report we just received.
We need a motion to
Receive the report.
receive the report.
I move that we receive the report.
And we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second from Mr. Bohart. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. The last few things I have on that three-page summary, if you'll look, the grant management audit, we're in the process of, we're actually meeting with management tomorrow morning to cover the results of that audit, and then we'll produce a report from that. So that will be forthcoming in a future meeting. We also have facilities and maintenance and information technology services that are on the docket to occur after spring break. We'll start planning. We've been planning on facilities and maintenance, and we'll begin the field work for that, meet with management, kick that off, and begin field work for that, as well as information technology services in the coming months. We have also, if you turn to page 2, we have been heavily in business continuity planning. So we have been looking at the business continuity and disaster recovery procedures for the college, which is interesting given the timing of recent events. So we've gotten to see some of that a little bit in real life for COVID, and then the big storm that just occurred. So we will be presenting that back. That is under our advisory project. So that is not an audit report, but you will receive a report of the activities and our recommendations back to the college from that. We also have coming up this spring an environmental health and safety advisory project as well. And so you'll get that report when we finish that project. But that's the status of the plan and some of the timing. Finally, on the last page of, we've provided a chart for you to be able to track audit findings, and this will roll from year to year. Chairman Mosier, you can see where those findings drop off when they're remediated. You'll be able to see that on a year-to-year running table. So we provide that to you just as a summary for you. So that concludes my remarks. I can answer any questions about the summary, but I appreciate you having me here tonight.
Any other questions? We appreciate you coming and appreciate the work that you did. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, trustees, that brings us to item C, which is the discussion and possible authorization for the administration to negotiate and execute contracts for the relocation of the football field house functions and updates to the Spencer Field block on the Blinn Brenham campus. Mr. Cervantes, you going to?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Dr. Hensley, members of the board. You see standing behind me, Mr. Philhake is going to make the presentation.
Very good. Good evening, Chairman Mosier, Dr. Hensley, members of the board. I'm here tonight to present to you agenda item 8C. The recommendation on this agenda item is that the board authorize administration to negotiate and execute contracts with Vaughn Construction and other vendors for the relocation of the football field house functions and updates to the Spencer Field block on the Blinn Brenham campus. And I'll run through some of the elements of the agenda item quickly, and then I'll get into a presentation to kind of help better explain what we plan to do, obviously with the board's approval. So with the Science, Technology, Engineering, and Innovation building slated for completion this summer, as well as our P3 project well underway and scheduled for completion in 2022, those two very high-profile projects are emphasizing the Spencer Field block. And with that, to allow for the possible renovation of this space, as a result of this high profile of the surrounding construction projects, the improvement of the Spencer Field block may be desired. So to allow for the possible renovation of this space, Blinn has developed a proposed plan to potentially relocate the football field house functions into the Bain building, which is currently occupied by the football coaching staff as well as the weight room. Then moving the football coaching staff and the weight room into the classroom building, which is a bit of a domino effect being brought about by the opening of the science building this summer. If approved by the board, the relocation of the football field house functions would then allow for the demolition of the Spencer Field House, which we'll see in our upcoming presentation, and subsequently updates to the Spencer Field block. If the board would approve, this authorization will allow administration to negotiate and execute a contract scope modification with Vaughn Construction, as well as contracts with other vendors to relocate the football field house functions and update the Spencer Field block. The proposed budget to relocate the football field house functions from Spencer Field House into the Bain building and the east wing of the classroom building is $150,000. These funds are available in our R&R budget. The proposed budget to update the Spencer Field block is $700,000. $120,000 of that is allocated for the Spencer Field House demolition, and $580,000 is a portion to the Spencer Field block update. Multiple interlocal contract quotes would be solicited for the demolition of the Spencer Field House. We've worked with some contractors in the past, but we can certainly get multiple quotes. And funds for the demolition are available in the R&R budget. Vaughn Construction's STEI contract scope can be modified so for the Spencer Field block updates, and funds for the Spencer Field block updates are available within the STEI budget contract with Vaughn Construction, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the presentation. So I'm going to, on the presentation, I'm going to give you just some graphic references of what we are looking at. So this is a site plan view of the area on the south of campus. The area highlighted in red and enclosed by red is our Science, Technology, Engineering, and Innovation building. We also have the remote parking that's adjacent to the Spencer Field House. And then we have the P3 that's just south of 5th Street. So this is going to become a very high profile area. And then in the middle of all that, we have our Spencer Field House. Late last fall, while taking a tour of the construction area, I was able to take a photograph from the 3rd floor of the STEI building looking out towards Spencer Field House. And this is a view of what you would see from a 3rd floor lab looking out towards the football field. Of course, also for reference on the conditions of Spencer Field House, I've taken some exterior photos, some photos in the locker room, the training room, meeting areas, laundry, and storage. And so as you can see, the Spencer Field House is in a condition that needs some help. So what we have looked at in administration is a multi-phased approach to help us come up with a solution to relocate Spencer Field House and come up with some longer-term solutions for the football program. Phase 1 of that would be a temporary relocation of the football field house functions. That could be accomplished this summer. We could also accomplish a phase 2 this summer that once we've moved those football field house functions out of the Spencer Field House, we could then perform a Spencer block update. And we'll get into the details of that. And then upcoming phases, which are in development as part of the master plan process, would be the potential construction of a practice field location in a different location than the Spencer Field block, as well as a new field house, which again, in the planning of the master plan. So the phase 1 options that we began to look at for this temporary relocation, we had looked at several options throughout the fall, trying to come up with something that fit. Again, in this 3 to 5 year plan, we looked at an option for purchasing some modular buildings, and depending on the quality and the aesthetic of the building, that price came in anywhere from $750,000 to $1.5 million. So it was a little expensive for us. Option 2 was moving the football functions into the classroom building west wing, which currently house the natural sciences. However, that was a problem because we are planning to demolish that portion. The plans are in effect for our next fiscal year to demolish that west wing. So that would have been a problem to put those functions in that part of the building. We also looked at a Solon's Hall option. That became problematic in that with the P3 not coming online until 2022, we would have the potential loss of some students. So we arrived at this option number 4, which is a less costly option, but it does come with some logistics that we have to work through, and I'm going to talk about those shortly. So getting into the phase one and that BAME option, classroom option is the recommended option. So now focusing on the recommended option, I'm going to talk about what we would plan to do. So the cost of this is about $150,000 to move the folks around. What we would look at doing is in the BAME building, we would relocate the locker room. We would reuse the showers in the restroom, which is a benefit. BAME building already has showers and a restroom. We would relocate the laundry facilities and the training room out of the Spencer Fieldhouse. Now, like I said earlier, BAME building currently has the weight room and the coaches' offices. We would then relocate the weight room, the coaches' offices into the east wing of the classroom building. And I'll have some graphics on the plans to help better explain this in a minute. We would relocate the weight room and the coaches' offices out of BAME into the classroom east wing. And there are also some classrooms that athletes typically use for classes in the morning that they could still take those classes in the morning, but then those classrooms could be used for football meeting rooms in the afternoon. And when we shared some of these early concepts with the athletic department, that was a very desirable situation. So athletics has been brought up to speed with some of these potential changes. We would also need some portable storage buildings. Football is still going to need field storage for some of their field equipment, so there will need to be some small storage buildings out near the football field. And just to make sure we're understanding this, the football practice field in this plan would need to stay on the Spencer Field block until a future solution is identified and implemented from the master plan. The pros of this solution is that we aren't doing any major renovations that would have had to have taken place in some of our other options. The cons of this is that it is intensive in the logistics. There's a lot of moving parts and pieces. So getting into the logistics, the big key in this is that we're going to be opening the STEI building. And when we open that, the natural science programs that are currently housed in the classroom building will be moved into the STEI building, as will the health science programs that are currently housed in the arts and science building. And that really opens up an avenue for us to move some folks around and get this done. So with the with the health sciences being moved out of the arts and science building, that gives us an open space. When we move natural sciences out of the classroom building, the remaining academic programs in the classroom building are the VPAC programs, the visual performing arts and kinesiology programs. What we have looked into and worked with various other departments at Blinn to figure out how this move could happen, we could move the visual performing arts classes and staff out of the classroom building east wing and into those vacated spaces in the arts and science building. Some of those kinesiology classes, which are currently taken by the athletes and taught by some of their coaches, could stay in the classroom building in that upper floor. And so they could still take their classes in the morning and then go to their football meetings, their athletic meetings in the afternoon. Both of those will happen this summer, the move into the STI building as well as the potential move of VPAC into the arts and science buildings. Those could happen this summer. Once we then move the VPAC programs out of the classroom building, we can move the weight room and the coaches from BAME into the classroom building east wing. And then that frees us up to be able to move the lockers, the training room and the laundry out of Spencer Fieldhouse and into the BAME building, freeing up the ability to move on to phase two. Phase two then being the demolition of the Spencer Fieldhouse and updates to the Spencer Field block. And so I'm going to give you just some graphics to, again, help represent this. This is the site plan. This blue block up on the upper right-hand corner, this is where the BAME building is located, just adjacent to us to the west. It's just down High Street from the football field, so still very good access from our students to get to the football field. This would be the east wing of the classroom building where we would propose locating the weight room on the first floor, coaching offices, and meeting rooms on the second floor. And then, of course, we're going to need some small storage spaces at the football field. Now I'm going to blow up some of the plans we're talking about. I've highlighted the areas in blue, but in the background, you can still see the large room to your right. This is the BAME building. The large room to your right is the weight room. Then you can see in the upper left, those are the coaching offices. And then the lower left are the existing showers and restrooms. So those would stay. What we would propose doing is using a large portion of the weight room for the football locker room, using another portion of that weight room for the laundry machines, laundry storage, and then repurposing the coach's office for a training room. We could still allow the meeting room, and there's still a storage space in the building for their use. Now, in the classroom building, this has got a lot more moving parts and pieces because of the move of natural sciences and some existing functions that need to stay. So this is also a little bit of a complex plan in that we have the second floor overlaid on the first floor, and there it is. So these areas on the upper portion, these are the second floors, and then this L-shaped is the first floor. The first area I want to bring to your attention is the red hatch. That is the area that's being vacated by natural sciences, and that would be the area that we would propose for a demolition project in the upcoming fiscal year. It's in our budget for the R&R. The grayed out area in the bottom right-hand corner of the first floor, that is the area currently housing our academic technology program. It needs to stay there, so we aren't affecting the academic technology program. The blue area are the areas currently housing the VPAC program. So these are the areas where we would move the staff, or the faculty staff and their classes into the arts and science building. We could then put the weight room on the first floor and use the 8 offices on the second floor for coaching offices as well as their meeting rooms. Now, before I go on to the phase 2 and talk about how we might plan to update the Spencer Field block, are there any questions on all the logistics and moving parts and pieces we have in the phase 1?
Yeah, Mark, can you go back to that last one? I'm real concerned about the closeness of that weight room and your IT department. I think you're going to have a real problem where with the sound, how loud that weight room is going to be. And you've got, I mean, that's the heart of the campus IT right there. I mean, so.
Yes, sir. We've talked about that. We are looking at doing some minor work in there to help divide the sound. Obviously, there's going to need to be some discussions with radios and making sure that some of that gets taken care of.
I don't think that's a good spot, to be honest with you. I think if you're going to put them there, then you need to do something with IT. I mean, because that's not going to work. Okay. I mean, have you heard how loud they are?
I've been near there to where I can hear them, and I agree. There have been some discussions with the potential of switching the functions in CO15 with CM1, which is going to be vacated, which would make this a less occupied space and really get most of the occupancy on this side of the wall, helping to better separate that. Those plans have not been more fully developed, but they have been brought to the table.
That would probably be a better idea, because that's where the building broke, right there, where you just, I mean, that was an add-on, that area right there. But you're still got that IDF room right there. You know, that's a highly sensitive room as well. And so you don't want folks up and down that hallway being able to get in there or
we are looking at putting some doors. It would still allow egress, but closing off the hallway on this side as well as this side to help better divide the entryway and to help better separate those spaces.
Have you considered the gym, the Heineke gym?
As a location for the weight room?
Right. Mm-hmm.
That has not been brought up in discussion yet, but we could certainly look at that. That would bring in some other impacts from some programs that are currently in the Heineke gym.
What is the Heineke gym? What is it used for primarily?
I believe the cheer and dance team uses it for their practice facilities and offices. I am not sure of all the other functions that may occur in the Heineke gym. Just some offices. Any other questions on the phase 1? With that, I'll go. Yes, sir.
You know, I think we need to consider that. I don't know. I mean, but obviously, surely there's a way to resolve that issue.
It's a valid concern.
If I might mention that Gensler has looked at this and they're considering some subsequent moves that they'll be proposing perhaps for the board's consideration in April. And one of them is potentially to move the IT area to a new data center location. So long-term, it wouldn't be there, is what they're going to propose.
So what's phase two?
So phase two would then, once we have vacated the Spencer Field House, this would be the update to the Spencer Field block. And as we began to develop these plans, we did talk with our architects, PBK, who are doing work at the STEI building, as well as Vaughn Construction. And this plan is something that PBK put together to help us put together some rough order of magnitude pricing. And so what you're seeing here is some highlighted areas where our Spencer Fieldhouse is located, the laundry buildings, the training rooms, the locker rooms, which would all be demolished. We would need to get a separate vendor. Vaughn Construction doesn't have a demolition contractor on their contract, so they would request that we would get a separate vendor through the interlocal quotes to do the demolition. And then a lot of the other areas of the Spencer Field block would be updated. You can see where we would clean out a lot of the sidewalks, a lot of the flat work. We would also go in and take out some of the old unused high jump, long jump, pole vault structures. We would also be taking out some of the old fencing with the old barbed wire top. We could take down the old electrical structure that used to run the lights. We would take down and store until we have a permanent home, the national championship sign, the old scoreboard could be taken down, really just begin to prepare the block for a cleaner look. Now, what we will say is that we need to keep the track for the structural integrity of the practice field and the drainage around the practice field, and the practice field would need to stay. So that would be the demolition, and we would also, I'm going to jump right back, we would also be cleaning up that sidewalk on the right-hand side of the football field, the east side of the football field that separates the football field from the health clinic and the houses. Now, what we would propose whenever we were to clean this up is once we take down the Spencer Fieldhouse, that then opens up an area for us to extend some parking that we couldn't extend and get about another 25 parking spaces, and then tie together a better sidewalk. We would also take some of the area that had been cleaned out by the Spencer Fieldhouse demolition, grade it out, put some grass and some landscape in there. The sidewalk we would add in would then tie back in to a new wide sidewalk with the P3 scheduled to open up. We're going to have a lot of students on this side of campus, so we would like to propose a 10-foot wide sidewalk on the east side of the parking lot and the football field to bring students back up to campus, and then bring that sidewalk along College Avenue to get them back to that intersection of College and High Street. Where a lot of students are crossing anyway. And of course, we would be making some improvements there to help with crosswalks. This would also include some site lighting, some landscaping. We would clean up the tree line and provide a screen fence between the parking lot and the residential houses there. So when we looked at this, we put some rough order of magnitude costs and some budgeting to this. The demolition of the existing Spencer Fieldhouse buildings is budgeted about $120,000, and these funds are available in the R&R budget. And then to demolish sidewalks, field paving, such as the high jump, the long jump, regrading the site, adding parking, adding sidewalks, site lighting, and the landscaping. We worked with Vaughn Construction to get a rough order of magnitude price there, and that was about $580,000. And that funding is available within Vaughn's current STEI contract. We would just be modifying their scope. As we've bought out packages and furthered the project, we have some contingency and buyout savings that we could shift into those scope elements. So the total cost that we're looking at for the Spencer block update is $700,000. And then, of course, we would have a potential phase 3 or a phase 4 that would come out of the master plan, where we would then develop a future practice field and field house as the master plan is developed and approved by the board. So before I jump into the potential phase 3 and phase 4 that we've worked with Gensler to give you a sneak peek on, are there any questions on the Spencer Field block update?
I do have a question. The actual football field itself, I think there's some bad spots in the field itself. Are those being fixed? Are we fixing those? Because, I mean, those are potential issues for guys breaking an ankle or whatever.
Right.
Right?
I know it needs some repairs. Richard, maybe you can assist with that question too, but you're exactly right, Trustee Colhorst. And I'll just mention so everybody's aware, I know Scott Schumacher, our athletic director, and Coach Mahan are participating by YouTube, so they're hearing the discussion.
I've not heard of any recent issues with the field. Annually, we top dress the field and with the sand and the aerating and that type of stuff. We have in the past had some sprinkler issues that have caused some minor divots, if you will, or some overspray that we've had to go in and spread some sand and fix. But typically, the field's well maintained, and we try to stay on top of that. It's an annual aeration and top dressing that we do perform.
Okay, I just want to make sure it was good, solid, safe surface.
Well, Mark, let me ask the question that, with going through the phases that we've talked about so far, the only question that come up is now is about the IT being a concern.
Yes, sir.
Is there, can we get some input or is there some way we can look to remedy that or be sure that what we're doing is going to be okay?
Yes, sir. I believe we could further those discussions. I think we could certainly approach Scott Schumacher and the various coaches and the occupants that might be in the Heineke gym and see if there's a way that we could share some spaces or make this work. If the linchpin in this is trying to find a more appropriate home for the weight room, but the rest of the plan seems to be an appropriate plan, I think we could certainly look at how to correct that issue or make it a more comfortable issue if that is a difficulty.
And there may be some expertise out there that can give us some give us some assurances from an unbiased point of view of whether or not this is good or that's not good. That's
certain. We could discuss that with some of our design professionals and have them help us as well.
Obviously, we don't want to shut down the operation over some guy playing his, is having his tunes too loud or something in the next round or whatever, or bouncing off the wall or whatever they do. So that would be my question. I mean, I think it's a legitimate question that needs to be answered.
Yes, sir. We can certainly look into that and bring something back as an update.
Go ahead.
So now on to the potential phase 3 and phase 4 that we talk about. Again, this would be coming out of recommendations for the master plan, but we do have a bit of a sneak peek into some of the discussions that have been happening. So as Gensler was looking at the master plan, we began to look at what we will call the 30 acres on the west side of campus, west of the cemeteries, south of the ag complex, and south of the Blinn College Park Apartments. And this is an area that has been identified that we could potentially look at future athletics for this area of campus. So as we looked at this, we looked at some of the potential options out there, and we broke this into a couple sub-phases, which as we develop the master plan could be somewhat in flux. But there could be an early phase, a phase 3, where we develop a road extension that is a road that we would share with our neighbor to the west and go along the western boundary of this property. We would extend a road, we would extend utilities because that portion of land is not served by utilities. We would also provide some parking and a practice football field in this area, that being the highlighted practice football field. And then the phase 4 would be further development of this, where we could develop a field house for football, men's soccer, women's soccer, golf, and softball, as well as any other subsequent athletic surfaces on that area. Again, all of this is really pending the finalization and approval of the master plan. So with that, I'll again stand for any questions on the overall plan to relocate football and update the Spencer Field block.
Could you locate the practice field with regard to if you went straight past the library, you know, going to the west, where would you be on that?
Let me see if I can get the mouse to cooperate with me. So here is the library.
Yeah.
That practice field would be somewhat, it's going to be obviously west of the library and a little bit north of the library. Again, this is still very preliminary in the master plan, but the access is going to be from, you know, you're going to have to come out of campus, the proper part of campus, and come along Mill Creek, and then come along the west side of the ag complex to get to that.
There'll be a walk.
Certainly,
walking
yes.
path that you could get
The
there.
walking path, there are walking paths that come from the baseball area along the new parking lot. And we are looking at, in that master plan, walking paths that could connect this athletic area and even other areas along Higgins Branch Creek.
Mr. Moser, are you referencing the field behind the O'Donnell Center?
I'm sorry?
The existing field behind the O'Donnell Center now?
Yeah.
That's our band practice field,
Oh,
and
okay.
that's where they use for their marching
Okay.
exercises behind baseball and O'Donnell.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
Okay.
Can you go back to the advanced slide? I think it was the next slide. We had to lay out all of the fields.
Yes, sir.
I was just trying to.
And
Some of that would potentially then extend into the floodplain if you go some of those potential baseball fields potentially.
Correct. We would need to, as we design that out, this isn't completely developed and vetted, but it's a concept, and you're correct. This being the creek, and it's very wooded there, so we'd have to develop that further and make sure that we don't get ourselves in any trouble.
There is no where, I guess you could say, our property line and the neighbor's property line. Is there currently an outlet that would take it to the bypass? Is there one already there?
Apple Way extends towards our property, but
It's not
some,
developed through, but there's
No.
an alleyway there.
correct,
Okay.
correct.
I don't see volleyball or basketball included in the field house for phase 4. Would they stay where they are?
That would be my understanding right now, yes.
Reverend Rose, you're talking about from the program, the athletic program side, correct? Okay, yes. Intramurals would be, would have some presence of those type of amenities, but not the athletic programs. That's correct.
So how many acres in that right there, Mark? Richard, no?
Just south of the ag area, I believe the overall is 30 acres. I don't know that I have a good calculation as far as the amount of land that we have used for that new ag sciences building. But overall, I believe that parcel of property is 30 acres.
If you used all of, let's just say if you were to see this to build the soccer and all the other fields, softball or baseball, whatever softball fields, I guess. I mean, is that taking up the 30 acres?
Yes, sir. Currently, the plan would be to have athletics use that full 30 acres.
A combination of intramural and
intramurals and athletics.
And
yes, sir.
athletics.
Any thoughts or questions of what's our deadline in terms of, I mean, I think the immediate question might be if we want to clean up and fix up the Spencer Stadium over there with the conjunction with the new science building, health building, science building and technology, and then with the dorm coming right behind that, providing some nicer aesthetics for those two facilities. So I guess the question is, would we be, is to move on phase 1? How soon do we have to do that to get it, to tie it in.
To get it done this summer, we really need to take action
Phase one
fairly
and two,
quickly.
right?
We need to approve phase one and honestly phase two to get Vaughn construction approved to move forward. So we really need action on that this evening.
And what's the total number on all that?
700.
700,000 for the update, and there will be, I believe it's 150,000 for us to relocate. The relocation, the moving, doing some minor work with connecting laundry equipment and adding some services. So it's 700 for the update and 150 for the phase one. Phase one is 150. The phase two is 700.
That includes the bond.
Yes. Vaughn is in the 700 number. And again, those funds are already allocated and we would just be using funds that are currently in Vaughn's STEI contract.
And since they are quickly concluding that, it does put some expediency to do this so they can do it while they're still here, correct?
Correct.
Otherwise, it would cost us more to get somebody to come.
Correct.
Yeah.
What if you did that and the gym? That's right where it was.
We did look at that. Our problem there is the showers in the gym are less accessible. If we put their locker room in the gym, they wouldn't have, although these showers again are a little dated, they are more functional and more accessible than the showers in the Heineke gym.
What was your comment, Dr. Krausen? What did you say? What did you ask? I didn't hear.
What if you moved this locker room, coach's office into the gym? There are showers in there. I mean, well, it seems like you could update that cheaper than.
Into the gym, being what gym? You talking about the Heineke gym or what? I don't know. I don't know anything about it. Never been in it.
I think we just need to follow up with discussions because at that point, if we're taking over that much of the Heineke gym, we could be displacing cheer and dance, and we have not had discussions to that extent that I could provide you an answer with that tonight.
I think it's a very valid suggestion. And what we would like tonight is get approval to move forward with one of those two, Dr. Krause said, and be very mindful of the sound and what type of acoustics we might need to provide back in the classroom building to meet the concerns there. And then we need to have that discussion with cheer and dance and how we would be displacing that program in Heineke. And I think, honestly, the larger cost, while Mark's got some valid concerns on the showers, I think the floor protection might be the larger cost at Heineke as well by including the.
Especially put the weights in there, sure. But,
right.
You know, that's going to be a problem with classroom buildings as well. I mean, that.
Correct.
A lot of weight. Classroom building has a base.
Correct.
Unlike where they currently are, where it's just a solid.
Right. No, I agree. But I really think to keep this on target and on path, I think those are our best two options to look at. And I think we can, with proper direction from the administration beyond the vote tonight, we'll come up with a solution that'll work, that'll fit everybody's needs.
So okay, so you got two options that you're looking at in terms of, or suggestions that you might look at to give us the opportunity to get this done on their phase one and phase two.
Phase one and two.
Okay. So, we can approve that subject to adopting either one of those solutions, or we can come back and vote on it after they come up with a recommendation. But the question would be, or it's a time element, I guess is what you're saying.
Correct. I think it would be difficult to get this done if we waited until the April board meeting.
I mean, part of this was going to be on the last month's agenda, I think, and we didn't have that meeting. So, but so what do you got? Anybody have any other thoughts? I mean, can we?
So, getting rid of the field house
uh, is probably the time. The problem with the time is that to be able to get all that done by the fall, you would have to do that. But I don't know. I just think you need to reconsider. I mean, has Welch and we have they been in this conversation at all?
We have mentioned it to Michael, and there was some initial concern about sound, but as we talked about the possibility of relocating, Christine Weed's folks from, I forget the exact number, down, and then providing some barriers and doing some acoustical treatment, he became somewhat more comfortable with it. But there were some discussions with that, but we did talk about the potential options, and that seemed to calm him to an extent.
Okay.
Has this been passed on to the foundation?
That's
Asking them to work on this?
I think that's going to be tomorrow. They're going to meet with the foundation. That's the new building. Well, I mean, we all agree. I mean, they're going to have to do something. I mean, the dressing rooms are terrible. I mean, we need to fix that, and we need to fix it with in conjunction with the new buildings that are going over there, I think. So I think, I think that Dr. Trousen's brought up some legitimate questions that need to be properly answered, researched. And I'd be willing to vote it and allow y'all to come back with us, telling us how we're going to do it.
What your solution to those concerns is going to be.
So that focuses mainly on where will we house the weight room?
The weight room is the
So if
is
the
the
weight
big
room is the
question.
trucks, we need to readdress where the weight room gets.
Either that or address how you're going to protect the IT department from the noise from the weight room.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think that's the big issue and concern, right?
I think push comes to shove, we all need to be concerned about what the IT is how they're going to come out and all this, but more than anything. So that's where the world turns anymore, unfortunately. But
that being said, I move the administration to approve the administration and negotiate and execute a contract for the relocation of the football field house functions and updates of the Spencer Field block.
all right, we have a motion. We have a second. We have a second from Dr. Krausen. Any discussion on the motion? No, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion carries. The ball is in your court, Mark. You and Mr.
We'll do our homework and we will get back with y'all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I
We
guess
know
I'm
y'all
staying up
can-
here for the next one as well.
We know you can solve the problems. Okay, we are up for some upgrades on fire alarms, apparently. Is that authorization for the administration to negotiate and execute contracts for fire alarm upgrades on the Blinn, Bryan, and Blinn, Brenham campuses?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Chairman Mosier, Dr. Hensley, members of the board. This authorization, or the board authorizes administration to negotiate and execute contracts with Britt Rice Electric LP, doing business as Crown Systems, for fire alarm upgrades at the Blinn Bryan campus, and with Herman Alarms LLC for fire alarm upgrades on the Brenham campus. Administration identified a need to upgrade fire alarm systems on the Blinn Bryan and Blinn Brenham campus. And as we identified that through an assessment last year, we contracted with the architect studio for the design services. And the scope of this includes the replacement of fire alarm systems in 10 buildings on the Blinn Bryan campus and 8 buildings on the Blinn Brenham campus. We advertised and received 3 proposals on February 23rd through the district's RFP process for RFPs 175 on the Blinn Bryan campus and 176 on the Brenham campus. The administration reviewed these proposals for the contractor qualifications and pricing, and based on these factors, the administration is recommending awarding a contract to Britt Rice Electric LP, doing business as Crown Systems, in College Station, Texas, for the bid of $577,800 for fire alarm upgrades on the Blinn Bryan campus, and awarding a contract to Herman Alarms LLC from Brenham, Texas, and for a total bid of $244,300 for fire alarm upgrades on the Brenham campus. These funds are available from the FY21 repair and replacement budget, but from the capital and deferred maintenance reserves. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
We have a motion.
Quick question.
All right.
What precipitated the review of our fire alarm systems to think we needed to upgrade?
They were beginning to become dated, and maintenance was beginning to become a problem. Some of the availability of replacement parts for some of the systems was becoming difficult. And so whenever we might have an issue, a maintenance issue, and we would go looking to get replacement parts, they were becoming more and more difficult to find, which caused us to look into an assessment of all of the fire alarm systems on the Bryan and Brenham campuses. And from that, it developed into this project.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we authorize the administration to negotiate and execute contracts with Britt Rice Electric LP, doing business as Crown Systems, for fire alarm upgrades at the Blinn Bryan campus, and with Herman Alarms LLC for fire alarm upgrades at the Blinn Brenham campus.
You've heard the motion. Do I have a second? We have a second from Mrs. Bain. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this authorization for administration to negotiate and execute a contract for purchase of information technology and audio visual equipment for the Science, Technology, Engineering building. Mr. Savantes, you going to handle that?
I'm not going to handle it, Mr. Chairman, but I'm going to start it anyway. Before I invite Mr. O'Malley to speak to the next two agenda items, there's been some questions about the use of these cooperative buying groups, and so I thought he's actually going to reference both of these in the next two agenda items. So I thought I'd give a little update for the board and give them some information, some very general comments about cooperatives. So the college purchases services or goods through these cooperative buying groups. It leverages the bulk buying power of the state of Texas, which means that Blinn can buy products and services at much deeper discounts through these cooperatives. We also, for us, we do not go through the lengthy procurement process, but doesn't mean that they do. That's how they secure these services and these goods. They go out with RFPs on a somewhat annual basis. They get folks, companies out there that put in their bids, and they vet them exactly the same way that the college does, to make sure that they are going to be able to satisfy the quality, and then the prices obviously are very good. We have refined our process over the years since I've been here on how we look at these. We don't automatically look at a opportunity for a vendor that is on a cooperative buying group and say, we're going to go to that, so we do not have to go out to competitive bids. We also have discovered very quickly, and this is actually one of the chancellor's recommendations, a good recommendation. I'd never done it until I had arrived here. We will look at the different vendors that provide similar services or similar goods through various cooperative buying groups, and we will look at them and ask for quotes from both of those. And also, because they give you a price, doesn't mean that you're stuck with that price. They can't go any higher than that, but you can actually negotiate it down. The cooperative buying group that Mr. O'Malley is going to talk about is specifically, and there's a number of different ones. This one is specifically focused on technology. And we have used them extensively over the years to be able to get, again, very, very good prices for us. We do have times, and I know this is certainly of interest for the board, that you will have your local vendors. I don't know that they fit in this category for the technology, that they have the means and the breadth and certainly the ability to compete on the cost. It's difficult for them. But from time to time, when we find that there are some vendors out there that are providing services through these buying groups, we do reach out to the community, to a local vendor, and say to them, you might want to go through the process. It's difficult, like I said, for them to be able to compete, and there's they have to put in these bids, and then at the same time, they have to follow back up with reports to the cooperative group. So it's not an easy process. That's all I have to say on that. If you have any questions on that, and then I'll let Mr. O'Malley come up and make the presentation. Are there any questions about the cooperative buying groups?
Do we pay to be in those groups?
Do we
pay to be in those groups?
Mr. Colcourt, it's a very good question. I like to brag on us from time to time. We don't pay, we actually get paid. So we get a small commission back at the end of the year.
All right. Question. Thank you. Mr. O'Malley, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Spaulding. Okay, Mr. Mosier, Dr. Hensley, members of the board, thank y'all very much. We've got 2 more items to go on action items tonight. Item 8E is the authorization to negotiate and execute a contract with Visionality for the purchase of information technology and audio-visual equipment for the STEI building. The board granted authorization to move forward with seeking proposals back in May of 2020. And also in following our approved procurement and purchasing policies, the district received a proposal from Visionality for FF&E items consisting of information technology and audio-visual equipment for the science building. The college academic technology department has reviewed and evaluated this proposal for best value to the college and has recommended that we move forward with awarding a contract to Visionality for $1,450,000 for these FF&E items. Please keep in mind that this purchase, like all the purchases we've made through our soft cost budget, are budgeted, and it's all within our budget. So we're under budget on this item. And we need to move forward tonight with this so that we can have the building open in August of 2021 for our use.
Getting closer all the time.
It is.
You've heard the recommendation of the administration. Do I have any discussion, or do you?
I move that we move for authorization and negotiation execution of a contract for the purchase of information technology and audiovisual equipment for the STI building on the Blinn campus.
I have a motion from Reverend Wells.
Second.
I have a second. We have a second. Mr. Colcourt, any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. Motion carries. Richard, you going to handle the last one for us?
Yes, I am, Mr. Mosier. Thank you again. Item 8F is a authorization for the administration to negotiate and execute a contract with Housley Communications for a fiber extension project on the Blinn Brenham campus. Mr. Cervantes referenced this earlier, the ability for us to use some of our CARES Act money that we received from the federal government. This project fits into those funds very well, and we've identified an area of campus on the southeast quadrant that could have enhanced fiber connectivity. And so we are proposing that we extend a loop in that southeast quadrant that would start at the Student Center. I think you've got a map possibly as an attachment that shows that route, but it would primarily, the 2 newer buildings that it would serve would be our P3 housing project in the new STI building, and then come back to the Student Center for termination. Again, Academic Technology has received a proposal for this work from Housley Communications for $150,000. Their review and subsequent recommendation is to move forward with Housley for this work. And
You've heard the recommendation of the staff. Did you have a Any questions, or do we have a motion? Okay. We have a motion to approve the purchase as recommended by the staff.
Second.
We have a second from Mr. Wells, Reverend Wells. Any discussion on the motion? All right.
Excuse me, I just have a question. I was just looking at the mapping of this conduit pathway. Is that going to disturb any of the improvements that have already been
No, sir.
done?
No, sir, they'll be using directional boring
Okay.
for that. And it's a company we've used several times in the past, Housley. And so they'll be getting the proper permits that they need from either the city or the state and doing it by directional bore.
Because I was saying, most of that we just finished approving. Okay.
Any other questions? You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, Richard. All right, trustees, we're going to go into executive session. Does anybody need a break? If not, we're going to try to move along. I know Dr. Krausen's got an appointment in Hong Kong here before long, so we'll see what we can get done before he has to leave. We're going to go into executive session under 551.071 and 551.072. And it is now 8:08 p.m. More time goes by when you're having fun, doesn't it?
And we do anticipate action after the executive session.
Yeah, we'll have an action item after